Chapter 22-23. He did not know much about Sun Huayu and Xielinshin. He glanced at Wen Yi. Wen Yi said, Elder Sun and Elder Xie are the Temple Master's trusted aides. They fought alongside the Temple Master when they were young and have always been ladies' secret protectors. They must go to the foreign battlefields this time. Chu Li nodded. Shueluoyu said, Chu Li, your cultivation level is improving. The foreign battlefields will be very dangerous this time. I'll leave everything to you. Lady, you don't have to be so polite. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Shueluoyu knew that Chu Li was different from before. When she tried to rope him in, he was just a master who had just made a name for himself. Although his cultivation level was high, it was not at the level where he could dominate the peak. Now, Chu Li was qualified to look down on the world. Although he was not invincible, he was already one of the top masters. Such a person could not be ordered around. He needed to be discussed and respected. Shueluoyu smiled sweetly. This time, I'm going there to make a contribution. I need to kill enough Asuras to suppress the contributions of the people in the temple. It's difficult, but with you, Chu Li, it's not impossible. Chu Li smiled. Lady, you think too highly of me. Although I'm experienced in killing Asuras, they've gone crazy and are desperate. It's easy for them to self-destruct. I'll be careful. Shueluoyu nodded. Chu Li then excused himself and returned to the Wheel Pagoda to carry the sword case with the 9 treasure swords. Early the next morning, he came to Shueluoyu's mansion and saw 2 old men standing in front of Shueluoyu. One of them was tall and strong, with a face full of white beard. He looked weather-beaten, as if he had been wandering in a harsh environment. The other was a handsome middle-aged man. His figure was thin and tall, but his eyes were bright like lightning, causing others to not dare underestimate him. Chu Li, you came at the right time. Shueluoyu was dressed in a white gown. She waved at him with her slender eyes and a faint smile. Chu Li stepped forward and bowed. Shueluoyu smiled and introduced the 2 elders to Chu Li. The burly one was Sun Huayu and the slender middle-aged man was Xie Donglin. The 2 elders sized him up and then looked at Shueluoyu, who was smiling brightly, and nodded slowly. Wen Yi smiled and said, Young miss, we can depart now. Let's go. Shueluoyu said, Elder Sun, Elder Xie, let's go directly to the extraterritorial battlefield. It should be very lively there. Sun Huayu said, Miss, do you have any elixirs on you? Don't worry, Elder Sunday, Shueluoyu smiled. Sun Huayu shook his head. How many did you bring? 3 bottles, Shueluoyu said. Sun Huayu shook his head hard and said, Not enough, not enough. Old Sun, aren't 3 bottles enough? Shueluoyu smiled and said, Are we going to be seriously injured? We're definitely going to get hurt. Sun Huayu said bluntly, Not getting injured in the foreign battlefields is simply a joke. It's like blowing smoke, it's impossible. Xie Donglin said, We're going to be injured more or less. Asuras are difficult to deal with. They'll suddenly self-destruct, and we can't avoid them even if we want to. Injuries in the foreign battlefields are very fatal. Asuras will chase us like wolves chasing sheep. No matter how good your light body technique is, they'll catch up to you unless you don't sleep or rest. Sun Huayu scoffed. Asuras are very sensitive to blood and energy. They'll definitely find you injured. All right, I'll bring 3 more bottles then, Shueluoyu said. 6 bottles each. Sun Huayu said, If you have more, bring them all. You won't think it's too much. All right, I'll bring all the elixirs then. Shueluoyu nodded. She turned around and quickly came back with a purple box the size of a jewelry box. She gently placed it on the stone table in the courtyard and opened the purple box. Inside were jade bottles of warm white jade that were exquisite and extraordinary. There were a total of 20 bottles and Shueluoyu took them out. Wen Yi, come here. Wen Yi stepped forward and quickly stuffed 10 bottles into his hands. He then asked Chu Li to go over and stuff 10 bottles into his hands as well. He smiled. That's all I have. We'll make do then. Sun Huayu nodded helplessly. Chu Li did not refuse and calmly put them in his arms. 10 bottles were quite a lot to carry. Fortunately, these jade bottles were not big, so it was not a big deal. Let's go, Sun Huayu said. Chu Li, what's on your back? A weapon, Chu Li said. A sword. Sun Huayu looked at it. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Sun Huayu knew that weapons were private matters and it was not appropriate to ask too much. Although she was very curious, she did not ask too much. Xie Donglin was a man of few words, completely different from Sun Huayu. The group set off and teleported to Sleeping Dragon City. Sleeping Dragon City was very lively. It was completely different from the last time Chu Li was here. It was like a different place. The streets were bustling with not only martial arts masters but also ordinary merchants. The 5 did not stay in Sleeping Dragon City and quickly left the city and entered Sleeping Dragon Mountains. As soon as they stepped into Sleeping Dragon Mountains, Chu Li's omniscient mirror noticed a few groups of martial arts masters. They were all in groups and there were people from various sections. They all looked tense and cautious. Chu Li nodded to himself. It was not wrong for these people to be so cautious. The void of the extraterrestrial battlefield was locked and could not be shifted. Once they encountered an opponent, they could either escape with their light body technique or fight to the death. Therefore, every time they encountered an enemy, it was a fight to the death. Looks like it's very lively here. We need to go deeper. The group used their light body technique to head south and encountered 2 groups of people. Sun Huayu was displeased. They're all crowded here. The Azuras are not stupid. Why would they come here? If they can come here, they must be top-notch masters, Wen Yi said. Sun Huayu nodded in satisfaction. That's right. Little one, be careful. If you encounter a Grand Azura, we might not be able to take care of you. Be careful and stay alive. Don't be greedy and kill an Azura. He glanced at Chu Li. Chu Li did not say a word. Although he was smiling, he seemed out of place, just like Xie Donglin. Because Chu Li was wearing an Earth Demon Stone, his powerful aura could not be detected. This made him seem even more mysterious. Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin were experienced old men. They knew that one should not judge a book by its cover. The more top-notch a master was, the stranger his temper would be. Therefore, they did not mind Chu Li's silence. They used their light body technique and headed south. In a day, they had traveled thousands of miles. In the evening, they sat beside a forest and started a bonfire. When he wanted to hunt some wild animals but was stopped by Sun Huayu. He wanted to hunt the animals himself. When he smiled. Elder son, won't I become a decoration? I can still do such a small thing. Then let Chu Li go with you, Sun Huayu said. He looked at Chu Li nodded. Let's go together. When he walked deeper into the forest with Chu Li, he smiled. Elder son, you're too cautious. Chu Li said, there's nothing wrong with being cautious. Brother Wen, don't be careless. All right. Wen Yi nodded helplessly. Chu Li suddenly frowned and looked to his left. When Wen Yi saw his gaze, he thought that a wild animal had appeared. He wanted to rush over but was stopped by Chu Li. It's an Azura. Chapter 22-24. With his martial arts, he should be able to sense the Azuras. Chu Li glanced at the forest and shook his head. When he yelled, "Come out!" 2 middle-aged men slowly walked out and calmly sized up Wen Yi and Chu Li. Chu Li did not look like he was skilled in martial arts, but Wen Yi's aura was like a mountain, heavy and solid, oppressing them like it was solid. They laughed. In the eyes of the 2 great Azuras, Wen Yi could not withstand a single blow. They would be able to defeat him in a few moves if they joined forces, but he was just baring his fangs and brandishing his claws. It was a waste of effort. Wen Yi could not tell the depth of the 2 men's cultivation, but he felt that they were extremely powerful. It was as if an endless force was pressing down on him, and he had to use all his cultivation to resist or else he would be out of breath. Chu did not move and only watched from the side. Wen-yi scoffed. What are you trying to do? Ha ha. The two middle-aged men shook their heads and laughed. We didn't want to bother with you two little bugs, but you're courting death, so we can only fulfill your wish. If that's the case, come at me. Wen-yi scoffed. As soon as he finished speaking, Shueluoyu, Sun Huaiyu, and Xie Donglin fluttered over. Great Azuras. Sun Huaiyu's expression darkened. How lucky! Xie Donglin frowned as he glanced at the two middle-aged men. He and Sun Huaiyu were protecting Shueluoyu from both sides. They could sense that these two great Azuras had powerful cultivation levels and were formidable opponents. They felt that they were unlucky to have encountered such powerful great Azuras so easily. These great Azuras were rarely seen. Xie Donglin said, Little one, step back. Yes. Wen-yi stared at the two great Azuras and slowly retreated to Sun Huaiyu and Xie Donglin's side. The two elders stepped forward and stared at the two great Azuras, adopting a defensive stance. If there was only one great Azura, it would be possible, but it was hard to say if there were two great Azuras. The two of them might not be able to defeat them, and there was still Chu and Shueluoyu. Although Shueluoyu's martial arts was strong, she could not help much. These two great Azura's cultivation levels were too high and they were from the older generation. Chu was unfathomable, and she could not tell whether his cultivation level was high or low. Chu was not famous enough. Many people knew of his existence, but they did not think much of it. After all, he was just an enlightened master who had rushed up from the lower realm and did not have any famous battles. Even if he had comprehended the heavenly scroll of indifference, it would not be a big deal. It only meant that he had a high level of comprehension and good luck. In the end, he did not become a disciple of Taihao Peak. The two middle-aged men shook their heads and smiled. Since you've delivered yourselves to us, you can't blame us. Let's do it. The two of them pounced forward as fast as lightning. Bang, 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 bang. Continuous muffled sounds came from the four people's fists and palms. The four of them fought back and forth, unable to determine the victor for the time being. Shueluoyu let out a sigh of relief and turned to look at Chu. I didn't expect to encounter such a powerful great Azura. Chu said, My lady, I don't have to do anything for now. I don't want to anger the two elders. All right. Shueluoyu originally wanted Chu to make a move as soon as possible so that the two elders would not be exhausted. What if they encountered another great Azura? However, since Chu had said so, she could not force him. She could only circulate her inner energy and prepare to attack at any time. If she were to make a move herself, Chu would not be able to stand aside and watch, would he? Chu stood with his hands behind his back and quietly watched the four of them fight. Sun Huaiyu and Xie Donglin's cultivation level was very high and they were not inferior to the two great Azuras. It would take around 1,000 moves to determine the victor. It was also possible that one of them could suddenly make a move and overwhelm the other. The outcome of a battle was often decided in a moment. A slight mistake could lead to life and death. Therefore, it was difficult to determine who would win. Although cultivation level was important, it was also important to be quick-witted. Elder Sun, Elder Xie, I'm coming! Shueluoyu shouted. Seeing that the situation was not good, she floated forward. My lady! Wen-yi shouted. He followed closely behind and attacked one of the great Azuras with Shuelu. The great Azura sneered and waved his left palm. A cold force rushed toward the two. My lady, young one, step back! Sun Huaiyu shouted. Chu waved his sleeve lightly and an invisible force surged out of thin air. It shielded Shueluoyu and Wen-yi, dispelling the cold force. The great Azura narrowed his eyes and glared at them coldly. Shueluoyu and Wen-yi continued to attack fiercely. The power of their fists and palms was extraordinary. The great Azura did not dare to take them head-on and could only dodge. This took up some of his energy and he could not focus on fighting Sun Huaiyu. He was very impatient and slapped his palm at Shweloyu again. Chuli waved his sleeve lightly again. The invisible force dispelled the palm energy again, and it dissipated before it could reach Shweloyu. Shweloyu's spirit was lifted and she was full of confidence. Her palm attack became even fiercer. Let's go. The two great Azuras looked at each other and turned to escape. After them, Shweloyu shouted. Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin quickly stopped her from giving chase. Elder Sun, Elder Xie, Shweloyu quickly said, if they get away, there will be endless trouble. If they found another two great Azuras, the 5 of them would definitely die. It was not that they were greedy for the credit of killing them. Sun Huayu shook his head and said, My lady, unless they have a huge grudge against us, they won't find another companion. These great Azuras are all proud and arrogant. They won't join forces unless they have no other choice and without the Azura deity king's strict orders. He turned to look at Chuli and said, Thank you, young Chu. Chuli gave a fist salute and smiled. Xie Donglin looked at him deeply but did not say anything. When he looked at Chu Li in confusion, he had already sensed that Chu Li's cultivation level was so high that it was beyond his imagination. If he had attacked just now, the two great Azuras might not have been able to escape. Why did he just watch as the two great Azuras left safely without attacking? It did not make sense. Shweloyu had her doubts and naturally asked. She knew that she had to be honest with Chu Li and would easily lose him if she tried to hide it. Chu Li, why didn't you attack? Chu Li said, My lady, I have my difficulties. Tell me. Shweloyu said, Is it hard to say? Chu Li sighed and shook his head. Shweloyu asked, Then you can't attack this time? I won't attack if I can, Chu Li said. Sun Huayu frowned. Young Chu, what are you afraid of? Chu Li said, I'm considered the Azura's public enemy now. If I attack and expose my whereabouts, they'll kill me no matter what. In fact, this was just a cover-up, but it was the only way he could say it. He could not tell the truth. That's true. Shweloyu said, Many great Azuras have died in your hands. Alright, you don't have to force yourself. Chu Li gave her a fist salute and thanked her for her understanding. My lady, should we go back? Sun Huayu said, The foreign battleground this time is more dangerous than we thought. It's better to go back for the sake of safety. Shweloyu smiled. Elder Sun, since we're here, how can we go back? Our luck won't be so bad that we keep encountering such masters. Alright, let's try again. Sun Huayu thought about it and felt that Shweloyu was right. Their luck wouldn't be so bad that they kept encountering powerful great Azuras. Chapter 22-25. Unfortunately, they were extremely unlucky. Not long after the two great Azuras left, while they were roasting a few wild animals, another 4 great Azuras appeared in front of them, sizing them up brazenly. Sun Huayu frowned and exchanged glances with Xie Donglin. These 4 great Azuras' cultivation levels were extremely profound and not inferior to theirs. They were not confident that they could win this time. Even if they won this time, it would only be a fluke. It might even be a Pyrrhic victory or even a crushing defeat. They turned to look at Shweloyu and Wen-Yi. Shweloyu and Wen-Yi also felt the power of these 4 great Azuras, and their expressions darkened. They did not expect that they would become a burden in the extraterrestrial battlefield. They did not even have a chance to fight. They could not hurt these great Azuras with such cultivation levels. On the contrary, if these great Azuras attacked, they might be injured or in danger of dying. Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin looked at Chu Li. Chu Li sighed and shook his head. He really did not want to fight because once he did, it would mean that the supreme masters of the great Azuras would come for them. It would be too dangerous for Shweloyu and the others. If he was not careful, he might lose his life. If there was a sect like Heaven-Shaking Pavilion in the Outland that could predict good or bad luck, there might be such existences among the Azuras. Otherwise, they would have been beaten to a pulp. With his strength, if he attacked, he might attract attention. Once he attracted attention, endless pursuit awaited him. This time, the Asuras must kill him, and he might become the Asura deity king's whetstone. No matter how powerful he was, Asuras were not afraid of death and always had the courage to challenge and assassinate him. If they really killed him, the reward would be huge because too many great Asuras had died in his hand. Sun Huayu said impatiently, "Young Chu, at a time like this, you should attack." Chu Li nodded slowly. "All right." Seeing that the 4 great Asuras had already begun to circulate their energy, he activated the celestial demon art and appeared in front of one of the great Asuras in a flash. Just as the great Asura was about to move, a strange force wrapped around his feet. This force was so pure that it disrupted his channeling. While he hesitated, Chu Li's Sky Killer sword at his waist lightly swept past his neck, and his head fell to the ground. Bang! A cloud of red mist suddenly appeared, and within the red mist, a vague image of the heart of Asura could be seen. Then, the red mist disappeared as well, as if the great Asura had never appeared. The expressions of the other 3 great Asuras changed slightly. They rushed toward Chu Li and attacked him with their Asura's palm. With a twist of his body, Chu Li deftly escaped from the 3 men's palm energy and appeared behind another great Asura. Without waiting for him to move, Chu Li's regal sky sword slashed across his neck again and beheaded him. And so the second great Asura disappeared. Chu Li shouted, "Retreat!" All of a sudden, he appeared beside Xueloyu and 1E and pulled them back. His body moved like a bolt of lightning as he moved at his fastest speed. Bang! Bang! 2 muffled thunder-like sounds rang out, and a red mist shrouded an area of 100 feet in radius. Chu Li, Xueloyu, and 1E had completely escaped from the red mist. Although Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin heard Chu Li's shout, they did not react in time. They hesitated for a moment before retreating, but it was too late. The 2 of them did not manage to completely escape. Although they used all their strength to escape, they were still a little short. Their bodies flew out as if they had been hit by a giant tree in the air. They crashed into 2 giant trees, which were as thick as a man's arms, and broke them. Then, they fell limply to the ground, motionless. Elder Sun, Elder Xie. Xueloyu rushed over and took out 2 small jade bottles from her arms. She opened the bottles and poured the elixirs directly into their mouth. Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin's faces were pale, and they were barely breathing. Fortunately, the spirit pills were miraculous and melted in their mouth. They did not need to expend any effort to swallow, and the spirit pills had already turned into clear air that seeped into their organs and began to heal their injuries. Chu Li came forward and sighed. "Blame me for not making myself clear." Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin had not fainted, but were still in a daze. When they heard him, they shook their heads. These 2 are too ruthless. After Sun Huayu consumed the spirit pills, his face continued to worsen. There was a hint of green in his pale face, and his breathing was still weak. He tried to speak. "My lady, this is what Asura is like. They're ruthless to themselves, but they're even more ruthless to others. You must be very, very careful." Xie Donglin said with difficulty, "We were too careless this time. I didn't expect them to be so decisive and ruthless despite their high cultivation level. They killed themselves." He glanced at Chu Li as he spoke. At the end of the day, it was all because of Chu Li. They were also shocked by Chu Li's swordsmanship, so they could not react in time and did not escape. They were 1 step away from death. Chu Li frowned at them and walked forward helplessly. He knew that the energy produced by a great Asura's self-destruction was extremely strange and pure. Ordinary spirit pills would not help at all, and they would only be devoured and destroyed by them. Chu Li had suffered a lot from them in the past, but he was not afraid now. He channeled the true Supreme Vajra scripture, and the true Supreme Vajra scripture that was formed from the spiritual chi of the upper heavens became purer and purer. It slowly entered Sun Huayu and Xiedonglin's bodies, and they felt a warm aura entering their bodies to welcome the cold aura that was destroying their internal organs. The warm force was like warm water being poured into ice, and the cold force quickly melted away. After a while, the green on the two elders' faces faded, and they gradually became pale again. Then, they slowly became rosy. Chu Li's supreme diamond scripture had a miraculous effect on recovery. The two could feel their bodies healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and they felt that Chu Li was even more unfathomable. After a while, Chu Li released his palms. Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin gently stood up and gave Chu Li a fist salute, not knowing what to say. Chu Li looked around and frowned. "My lady seniors and brother one, we'll have to split up." Sun Huayu asked, "Why do we have to split up?" Chu Li replied, "I'm guessing more great Azuras will come looking for me soon." "You've exposed your identity?" Shueluoyu asked. Chu Li nodded. "I'm afraid I've already been exposed." "That might not be the case," Shueluoyu said. "Let's not split up for now." Sun Huayu pondered for a while. "My lady, why don't we return to the town?" He had encountered two great Azuras, and he felt that something was wrong. The foreign battleground was a little strange now, and it was not suitable to stay there any longer. He had never encountered so many great Azuras before. Great Azuras were usually rare, but now they seemed to be everywhere. The two of them could handle two great Azuras, but if they encountered four, it would be difficult to take care of Shueluoyu and Wenyi. Shueluoyu and Wenyi could handle ordinary great Azuras, but it would be difficult to handle the powerful ones like the four just now. Even if they could handle them, what if the great Azuras died together? They would not be able to escape. After thinking about it, it was better to go back and not force themselves. Shueluoyu hesitated for a while before she said, "Elder son, let's go forward and see. These two groups might be the strongest." Sigh. Sun Huayu sighed helplessly. He knew that Shueluoyu wanted to make a name for herself, and this was a rare opportunity. "All right, let's go forward and see." "Chu Li, you should come with us," Sun Huayu said. Chu Li nodded. Chapter 22-26. Over the next 2 days, they did not encounter any Azuras but many Celestials. These Celestials all had high cultivation levels and were the elite disciples of various sections. Some were excited, some were disappointed, and some were sad. To be able to reach this area, they had all experienced countless battles of life and death. Those who didn't had all died in this foreign battleground. Almost every inch of the foreign battleground was soaked in the blood of Celestials and Azuras. There were no heavenly demons in this area, and it was said that heavenly demons had retreated and no longer participated in the battle between Azuras and Celestials. Moreover, there seemed to be a problem with the cooperation between heavenly demons and Azuras. Chu Li knew it was because of I Ching Song. If Azuras did not kill I Ching Song, it would be like having a fishbone stuck in their throat. The Great Dream sect would not let Azuras have their way. The cooperation between the two realms had turned into confrontation. Although it was not an all-out war like the Celestials and Azuras, it was getting worse. In the evening, they stopped at the peak of a mountain and sat on a boulder, eating and watching the sunset. The setting sun, above the sleeping dragon mountains, was particularly intense. It was as red as blood, dyeing the entire ground red. As they watched on, they felt an ominous feeling. They felt like the sky was filled with blood-red light. Sun Huayu shook his head. This time, it was a close shave. "Lady, why did you do this?" "Elder son, you know my difficulties." Shueluoyu pursed her red lips, looking determined. Her brows were like distant mountains and her eyes were like autumn water. She sat on the boulder like a jade statue. A breeze blew and her yellow gown fluttered. Her graceful figure revealed her determination. "All right, let's see our luck." Sun Huayu said, "This time, it's all about luck. If we're unlucky, we can forget about it." Wenyi smiled. "Elder son, we're much luckier now. It's not like the beginning." That's true. Sun Huayu nodded. If they were lucky at the beginning, they would be heavily injured even if they survived. Even with Chu Li, they would not be able to escape. Chu Li was sitting on the side eating when he suddenly looked into the distance with a serious expression. Someone else is coming? Shueluoyu asked softly. Chu Li nodded slowly. Someone powerful. I'll go take a look. Everyone understood what he meant. The newcomer's cultivation was extremely high, and they were afraid that they would be hurt if they attacked, so they could only remain silent. Chu Li took 2 steps forward and in the blink of an eye, he was already 200 feet away. They stood at the top of the mountain and looked down. They could see Chu Li stop, and then a middle-aged man drifted out of the forest. He was about 40 years old and had a handsome face. His eyes were as bright as the stars and his expression was calm. He glanced at the 4 people at the peak of the mountain and then looked at Chu Li. Who are you? Chu Li pulled out the heaven-killing sword and said in a deep voice, Chu Li. You're Chu Li? The middle-aged man chuckled. I've finally found you. Chu Li narrowed his eyes. Are you looking for me? The middle-aged man nodded and said, It's said that your cultivation isn't very high, but you're our bane. If we don't eliminate you, wouldn't it seem that our Azura is too incompetent? You want to be the Azura deity king, don't you? Chu Li asked. The middle-aged man was taken aback and chuckled. It seems that I have underestimated you. The matter of the Azura deity king was an internal matter of the Azura deity king and would not be leaked to the outside world. It was impossible to obtain information from an Azura because he was not afraid of death. Chu Li said, Stop? Gather? Kill? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill them? The middle-aged man glanced at the 4 people at the peak of the mountain and smiled. It seems that you care about them a lot. Chu Li nodded. I don't want to involve the innocent. The middle-aged man laughed coldly. How can there be innocent people in the extraterrestrial battlefield? Chu Li's heaven-killing sword trembled slightly and floated out. The middle-aged man suddenly flashed away and shot toward Shueluoyu and the others. Chu Li flashed again and blocked in front of him. When the heaven-killing sword was thrust, a strange force burrowed into the bottom of his feet. The middle-aged man tilted his body and fell to the ground without hesitation, avoiding the sword. Chu Li was surprised. The heaven-killing sword could produce an invisible force to bind the opponent when activated by the heaven-killing sword technique. At the same time, it could attack from the feet. Almost no one could avoid the combination of the two. This great Azura was the first. Chu Li's heart trembled. This middle-aged man had a high cultivation level. The heaven-killing sword was no longer enough. Is that all you've got? The middle-aged man took another step forward and closed the distance between him and Shueluoyu and the others. Chu Li slid in front of him and stabbed the heaven-killing sword and the heaven-killing sword at the same time. Bam 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 bam. The middle-aged man tilted his body to avoid the heaven-killing sword. At the same time, a red light appeared around his body to block the heaven-killing sword. The middle-aged man's cultivation level was higher than Chu Li's, and he had a special skill that could break the heaven-killing sword's restraint. Otherwise, he would have died under the heaven-killing sword even if his cultivation level was higher. The heaven-killing sword was solid and pure. Chu Li's cultivation level was higher than his, and his protective chi barrier could not block the heaven-killing sword. The middle-aged man could block Chu Li's proud antique study and completely suppress him. Chu Li felt that something was wrong. He had no other way out, so he activated the sacrificial power. Bam! In a strange muffled sound, he suddenly shrunk as if he had become shorter and thinner. Then, he moved like lightning and struck the middle-aged man with his palm. Bam 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 bam! The middle-aged man's palm collided with Chu Li. Chu Li was suppressing the middle-aged man. His body movement technique and techniques were as fast as lightning. Shueluoyu and the others could only see 2 blurry shadows and could not see their techniques clearly. Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin stared at them and said, My lady, you and young one should leave first. Shueluoyu shook her head. We can't. We can barely block him. Sun Huayu said, but he was not confident. Looking at their cultivation level, he estimated that they could not even block 10 move. We can only rely on Chuli now. Xie Donglin said. If it comes down to it, he glanced at Sun Huayu. Sun Huayu nodded slowly. They all understood that if it came down to it, they could only perish together with the Great Azura. Even if they could not kill the Great Azura, they had to injure him severely and give their lady a chance to escape. Under the activation of the sacrificial power, Chu Li's cultivation level increased tenfold. However, the middle-aged man did not show any weakness. He also used his secret skill and activated his potential to fight Chu Li head-on. He even subdued Chu Li. Although the true Supreme Titanium Supreme Scripture could subdue the Azura power technique, just like how water subdued fire, if the fire was much stronger, it would subdue the water. Buzz. The Sky Killer Sword and the other 8 swords rose into the air at the same time and gathered to form a sword wheel that slowly floated above Chu Li's head. Bam! Chu Li was suddenly hit by the Azura's palm. He spat out a mouthful of blood and flew into the air. The middle-aged man sensed danger and chased after him into the air again. His eyes were cold. TSS. Chu Li made a sword gesture with his right hand and pointed at him. The 9 swords turned into a silver light and instantly collided with the middle-aged man. Ha! The middle-aged man shouted with a thunderous voice. Shueluoyu and the others fell to the ground with blood at the corner of their mouths. Chapter 22-27. The silver light dispersed and a bloody mist surged up. An Azura's heart flashed and disappeared. The faces of the 4 people on the mountain stiffened. They stared at the dispersing silver light in astonishment. They watched as the 9 swords fell to the ground with a clang, no longer carrying the momentum of the sword wheel. Chu Li's face was pale as he slowly let out a sigh of relief. He slowly walked to the 9 swords and bent down to pick them up. He sheathed the regal sky sword back into the scabbard at his waist and placed the other 8 swords into the thick sword case on his back. Shueluoyu and the others initially thought that Chu Li was carrying that heavy sword case on his back was a little ridiculous, but now they could no longer think so. They only felt a chill, as if this thick sword case had turned into a monster that could swallow them at any time. Chu Li pretended to pack up the 9 swords strenuously. He glanced at the ground, but there were no signs of a fight. It was as if the middle-aged man had never appeared. However, he knew that once he used the 9 swords, the Azuras would definitely sense it. There would definitely be an even more powerful Great Azura coming to kill him. Whether he lived or died would depend on his own abilities. While he was panting, Shueluoyu and the others had already drifted over. Sun Huayu exclaimed in admiration, "What a great 9 swords as one!" Chu Li nodded. "It's 9 swords in one. I didn't expect to see the legendary 9 swords in one. Is this the antique study of the city of 10,000 swords?" Sun Huayu asked in surprise. "Chu Li, how did you perform it?" Chu Li smiled. "I stole the treasured sword from the city of 10,000 swords." Sigh. 9 swords in one is said to be a sword formation for 9 people. I didn't expect you to be able to use it alone. It's really shocking. Sun Huayu shook his head and exclaimed, "It's really amazing." He never would have thought that there would be such a powerful move. With the sword wheel, even such a powerful Great Azura was smashed into pieces, unable to resist at all. Chu Li said, "The power is strong, but the price is high too. I can't use more than a few strikes." If such a powerful martial art could be used endlessly, how would the masters of the world survive? Sun Huayu laughed. "Chu Li, you have such a divine martial art. No wonder you can't use it lightly." Once such a martial art was used, of course, he would become the target of public criticism. He could guess that even more powerful Great Azuras would come knocking on his door. Chu Li said, Elder son, we should part ways. Sigh. Sun Huayu sighed softly and nodded. He turned to look at Xuelu. My lady, it's really not suitable for us to stay by Chu Li's side anymore. It's too dangerous. In the future, the great Azura that comes after us will definitely be even more powerful. Even Chu Li might not be able to defeat a great Azura. We'll definitely die. That's why it's too dangerous to be around Chu Li. We need to avoid him. Okay. Xuelu nodded gently. She took a deep look at Chu Li. Chu Li, you have to be careful. Chu Li asked, will the lady stay here or return to Wulong Town? Xuelu said, I'm not willing to leave with my tail between my legs. Chu Li shook his head. The current situation is too dangerous. The Azuras have gone crazy. They're crazy, so we have to be crazy too. Otherwise, are we supposed to avoid them? Xuelu said, if we are really afraid of them, we will only become weaker and weaker in the future, and we will never be able to suppress the Azuras. What Lady Xiao said makes sense. Alright then, I'll stay and watch, Chu Li said. He was impressed by Xueluoyu's determination. She was stronger than most men. If they could get through this, they would definitely be able to gain a foothold in the Rain Master Palace and stand out from the crowd. They would then be able to take a solid step towards taking control of the Rain Master Palace. Sun Huayu and Xie Donglin did not say anything. Wen Yi naturally obeyed her. Chu Li separated from them and fluttered into the forest alone. Sigh. Xueluoyu looked at his disappearing silhouette and shook her head. A dragon cannot be raised in shallow waters. Lady Xiao, it's true that we shouldn't be with him now. We'll definitely die. Sun Huayu comforted her. It's because of your ability that you managed to win over someone like him. Xueluoyu smiled. It's just luck. I can see that he's a person who cares about old friendships. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to worry about anything. He could just attack us directly and we might not even know how we died. It's not a loss to him, Sun Huayu said. Xueluoyu nodded. He's a person who cares about old friendships. This was what she valued the most about Chu Li. It was important that he was skilled in martial arts, but if he had the heart of a tiger or a wolf, she could only stay far away from him to avoid being bitten in the back. I hope he can make it through this time, Xie Donglin said in a low voice. Sun Huayu nodded. I hope so. They could tell that Chu Li's 9 swords unification would not last more than a few strikes. However, he had already poked a hornet's nest. The great Azuras would not allow him to kill them. They would definitely find a way to kill him. It was hard to say whether he could escape or not. When he said, not only is Brother Chu skilled in martial arts, but he's also very intelligent. I'm sure he'll have a way to escape. That's true. He was able to break through to the heavenly beyond realm from the lower realm, and even survive to this day in the heavenly beyond realm. How could he not have some true abilities? Sun Huayu chuckled. Then let's go quickly. This was the place where they killed that great Azura. They were afraid that other great Azuras would sense it, so it was better for them to leave. They quickly left. A moment later, 2 great Azuras arrived. They sniffed the air and looked around before chasing after Chu Li. The moon hung in the middle of the sky. Its clear radiance shone down and the universe was crystal clear. Chu Li sat quietly on the top of an ancient tree, feeling the tranquility of his surroundings. His omniscient mirror was observing everything within 100 miles. He seemed to be observing it intentionally or unintentionally. He fell into a hazy silence and cultivated his spirit, allowing his heart to be at ease. Suddenly, he opened his eyes. 2 great Azuras appeared in his vision. Their cultivation levels were shocking and not inferior to the one he killed earlier. He frowned. He felt that these 2 were obviously chasing after him. He had the Earth Demonic Stone and star power. Logically, they should not have been able to find him. They could not sense him. The only possibility was that the great Azura he killed back then had used some kind of secret skill. Perhaps killing a great Azura would cause other great Azuras to sense him. He had killed so many Azuras, but he still did not have a deep understanding of Azuras. He slowly pulled out the regal sky sword and tossed it into the sky. The sword case behind him opened by itself. 8 swords were automatically unsheathed and shot into the sky. They gathered together to form a sword wheel that slowly floated in the air. Chu Li's control of his inner energy was now extremely exquisite. He opened the sword case with his inner energy and unsheathed the swords. After some practice, he could control them freely as if someone had unsheathed the swords and tossed them into the air. The sword wheel floated silently in the air. The 2 great Azuras slowly approached him. They had profound cultivation levels and sharp senses. They could sense fatal danger, so their footsteps became lighter and slower. They were careful with every step, afraid that they would step into a trap. Chu Li sat on a tree and closed his eyes. He completely concealed his aura to test if they could really sense his aura. He quietly moved 2 trees and changed his direction. Chapter 22-28. The 2 great Azuras were slower and more cautious, but they still approached Chu Li step by step. Finally, when they were about 100 meters away, their gazes suddenly landed on Chu Li. Their gazes suddenly became firm, like 4 swords piercing towards Chu Li. They were sharp and vicious, like hungry wolves that were about to devour him. Chu Li sat on the treetop, swaying with the night breeze. Under the moonlight, he seemed to be one with the ancient tree. It was hard to notice him unless one looked carefully. Chu Li smiled and pointed at one of the great Azuras with his right hand. Swoosh! The sword wheel suspended in the air turned into a ball of silver light and instantly appeared in front of the great Azura, shrouding it. The red mist suddenly appeared. An Azura's heart flashed and disappeared. The great Azura had disappeared. Chu Li pointed at another great Azura with his right hand. The other great Azura was 10 meters away from his companion. When he saw the silver light, his hair stood on end. He was alarmed and turned to run. The further he ran, the better. He did not want to meet Chu Li ever again. However, he ignored the warning and slammed his palm at the silver light. It was a palm that he had condensed all of his energy. Chu Li pointed his sword and the silver light met the great Azura. Swoosh! The silver light broke through the palm energy and enveloped the great Azura without any resistance. The great Azura roared and a blood-red light gathered around him. At the same time, he pushed his palm forward to resist the silver light. Immediately after, a cloud of blood mist appeared without a sound. Then, a heart of Azura flashed and disappeared. The night was quiet again. The moonlight still fell on the surroundings like water. The quiet surroundings slowly returned to the chirping of insects. Chu Li closed his eyes again and felt every bit of his body. He deliberately observed them to find out how they could track him. Could it be that the great Azura could perform some secret skill before they died to provide their companion with a source of sensing? The omniscient mirror had been watching them and noticed something strange. When the 2 hearts of Azura disappeared, 2 extremely thin red lines floated out. They were so thin that they could not be seen with the naked eye and had no aura. Only the omniscient mirror could see and detect them. The red lines fluttered as if they were moving with the wind. Unfortunately, Chu Li was sitting upwind, and the red thread was slowly approaching him against the wind, trying to land on him. Chu Li did not notice it when he was killing the great Azura earlier, but now that he had noticed it, he naturally would not let them get any closer. His figure swayed as he evaded the 2 red threads, but the red threads were relentless and continued to chase after him. Although they were slow, they were constantly swimming around. Chu Li beckoned for the 9 swords to return. 8 of them returned to the sword case, while the regal heaven's sword returned to his scabbard. Then, his body shot out like lightning and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye to avoid the 2 red threads. In one breath, he ran to a forest 100 li away and sat on a tree. As soon as he took a breath, his expression turned solemn. The 2 red threads were still chasing after him, and they were even speeding up. It seemed that as the distance between him and them increased, their speed also increased. After a while, they arrived at this side of the forest and continued to swim towards him, unyielding and persistent. Chu Li frowned as he stared at them. Using the omniscient mirror, he suddenly focused, thoroughly meticulous. In these 2 red threads that were so thin that they could not be seen by the naked eye, only the omniscient mirror could detect them. Chu Li actually found a trace of soul energy, as if these 2 red threads had souls. It was this trace of soul energy that made them recognize him. The God-punishing thunder sword in Chu Li's mind stabbed fiercely. Swoosh! The 2 thin threads swayed and actually avoided the God-punishing thunder sword. Chu Li's eyes widened. After the God-punishing thunder sword was released, only those who blocked it could not avoid it, but these 2 thin red threads actually avoided it. He felt that it was strange, so he shot out the God-punishing thunder sword again. They dodged again and suddenly flashed, so fast that Chu Li could not react in time. In an instant, they landed on his body and merged into his flesh and disappeared. Chu Li frowned and examined carefully. The omniscient mirror illuminated his body from inside out, almost to the extent of every cell, but he could not find the existence of the 2 thin threads. They had completely merged into his body. Chu Li sighed. There were all sorts of strange things in the boundless universe. This time, he had truly broadened his horizons. However, he knew that things were not looking good for him. Putting aside the great Azura he had killed earlier, he had already killed 3 great Azuras during this trip to the extraterritorial battlefield. At least 3 red lines had fused into their bodies. The more red threads merged into his body, the stronger they were, the more attractive they would be to the great Azuras. It was like rushing in the middle of the night. His body was glowing, and he could feel it from afar. Those great Azuras who had great ambitions were determined to kill him. He must find a way to destroy this red thread. If he could not destroy it, he must find a way to avoid it, or else it would become more dangerous. When he was doing this, he was multitasking. He was also circulating the sword technique of the 9 swords, accumulating the inner energy condensed from the sword technique into their respective energy seas. He only stopped and rested when the 9 energy seas were full. When the sky had just brightened, Chu Li opened his eyes and looked at a certain place thoughtfully. A great Azura had silently approached 100 meters away and was hiding in a pile of rocks. Even though he was sitting on a treetop, he could not see the great Azura in the pile of rocks. His aura was completely integrated with his surroundings. There was not a trace of strange aura or murderous aura. If Chu Li did not have the omniscient mirror, he would not have noticed his existence. Chu Li shook his head. He knew that he could not do this. Even though his aura was hidden, Chu Li could still sense that this great Azura's cultivation level was higher than his. This time, the Azura realm had really gone crazy. In the past, the great Azuras that he had encountered were not as strong as him. Now that his cultivation level had increased by several times, it was reasonable to say that it would be difficult to meet a great Azura whose cultivation level was higher than his. However, the truth was the exact opposite. Almost all the great Azuras that he had encountered along the way were stronger than him. This showed the strength of the Azura realm and the might of the Azura deity king. This caused those old Azura demons who usually hid themselves to come out and fight for them. These old demons had killed countless people. The Azura power technique was profound, and there were many whose cultivation levels were higher than Chu Li's. Those Devis who thought that this was a rare opportunity would probably suffer heavy casualties. It would be fine if the old demons among the Devis were involved. They might be evenly matched. However, most of the sect disciples that he had encountered along the way were young heroes. Could it be that the Heaven Shake Tower did not predict this? He immediately cast aside these worries. He was not a savior, so he could not care so much. It was better to escape with his life first. The heaven-killing sword was unsheathed and flew into the sky. The other 8 swords shot out of the sword case and flew into the sky to gather with the heaven-killing sword. They formed a sword wheel. As Chu Li pinched the sword technique with his right hand, the sword wheel slowly rotated. It spun faster and faster until it turned into a ball of silver light. "Since you're here, why don't you show yourself?" Chu Li shouted. A thin elder flew out of the rock. His body was strong and his face was gloomy. His eyes were like cold lightning as he stared at Chu Li. Chu Li shook his head and pointed the sword technique with his right hand. Swoosh! The silver light shot out and instantly enveloped the thin elder. Bang! With an explosive sound, the thin elder was sent flying. He stretched his body in the air in an attempt to escape. Chapter 22-29. Chu Li frowned. He opened his 9 chi Cs again, and shot out 9 sword technique inner energies. The energy in the 9 swords was exhausted, and the sword wheel almost scattered. Chu Li scoffed. This old man used a treasure that was so powerful that it could block the 9 swords as one. He should not underestimate the heroes of the world. It was rare to have a truly invincible martial art. The old man adjusted his body in midair and shot at him again. Chu Li activated the fundamental technique and pointed his right hand at the old man. He could tell that the old man wanted to perish together with him, so he could not let him have his way. Swoosh! A ball of silver light engulfed the elder, and a cloud of red mist appeared without a sound. A heart of azura flashed and then disappeared without a trace. A thin red line that was so thin that it could not be seen shot towards Chu Li. It was so fast that Chu Li could not dodge it. Chu Li did not expect the thin line to be so fast this time. He did not have time to dodge it. The red thread penetrated his body. This time, Chu Li's omniscient mirror could see everything clearly. In an instant, it penetrated his bloodstream and dissolved into his blood, disappearing completely. Chu Li frowned and stared at the blood with the omniscient mirror. It flowed through every part of his body and then entered his heart. His heart beat faster and then there was no other change. Chu Li knew that although it disappeared, it did not disappear. He could not see it, but the Azuras could sense it. They could see it clearly like a light at night. He shook his head and sighed. He really had to be careful of these great Azuras. He did not expect them to have treasures and use them without hesitation. His figure fluttered, not daring to sit on the treetops again, nor did he dare to sit on the peak of the mountain. He found a deep and dense valley and burrowed into it. Then, he sat beside a pool of water beside the valley. During this process, he kept staring at his heart to see if there were any abnormalities. Faced with this red line, the heavenly demonic orb did not react. The true Supreme Diamond Supreme Scripture and Great Light Scripture that always restrained the Azura power technique did not react either. Even the few Buddhas and strange little beasts in his mind did not react. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture also ignored it. For a moment, he actually could not find a way to restrain this red thread. Could it be that he could only watch as it accumulated in his body and become more and more attractive to Great Azura? He did not need to think too much to know that as the number of red threads accumulated, the Great Azuras would be able to sense him further and further away. In the end, he would have nowhere to hide, and all the Great Azuras would be able to sense him. Chu Li suddenly thought of something and laughed. This was both a temptation and a deterrent. With this kind of intense feeling, the weaker Azuras wouldn't come over to throw away their lives. Normally, Azuras didn't fear death. All they had to do was start over again. They were undying and undying. However, this was a critical period, a crucial period where they had a chance to become the Azura deity king. If they died once, it would mean that they would no longer be able to compete for the Azura deity king's position, and they might not be willing to do so. The Azuras were all unwilling to fall behind others. None of them were willing to submit to anyone else, and all of them wanted to become the divine king. Those great Asuras with slightly weaker cultivation levels would definitely look for the weaker ones to kill first. Through killing, they would increase their cultivation levels, and only when they were stronger would they come over to look for him. Chuli tried his best to derive the flying star technique. He shook his head and could not help but laugh. This was just wishful thinking on his part. The actions of Asuras were not that easy to predict. Because of their different attitudes towards life and death, they could not be viewed with common sense or different logic. He worked hard to cultivate the flying star technique in order to widen his 9C of aura so that it could accommodate more of the 9 swords sword technique's inner energy. This would allow him to release more swords. In the future, he would encounter more great Asuras. When that time came, it might not be a one-on-one battle. If he were to face more than one great Asura, he was afraid that his 9 swords as one would not be enough. Unfortunately, no matter how mysterious the flying star technique was, it could not widen his sea of aura in a short period of time. He had already passed the period where he could advance by leaps and bounds. Now, he had reached his limit and he needed to accumulate it bit by bit. He rested for 2 days. On the morning of the 3rd day, 2 great Asuras slowly walked in. They were very careful and could not see his face. They could only sense him. Before they saw him, they saw the silver light and were extinguished by it. The 2 red lines shot at him in an instant. He leaped and ran away, using his body movement technique to the extreme. In just half a day, he had run 1,000 miles away. Unfortunately, the red lines were as fast as lightning and were not slower than him. In the end, they still caught up to him and merged into his body. Chuli frowned. He felt his body and could vaguely feel a hint of strength. It was as if these red lines were strengthening his body. Although it was weak, he could still sense it through the observation of the omniscient mirror. After all, his body had already become extremely strong. It had surpassed the limits of a human and reached the level of a spirit beast. Even the most top-notch torso tuning technique was useless to him. It could not strengthen his body anymore. However, these few red lines actually strengthened his body a little. If they were used on ordinary martial arts masters, the strengthening effect on their bodies would be visible to the naked eye. It was extremely attractive. Chuli shook his head. In the blink of an eye, he thought of many things. The Celestials could actually strengthen themselves by killing Asuras. On the other hand, Asuras could sense these Celestials through these red lines and kill them. At first glance, it seemed like they were spirit pills that strengthened each other's cultivation level. If that was the case, how could the Celestials and Asuras live in peace? After the 2 great Asuras were killed, Chuli was quiet for a few days. He stayed in the deep ravine and did not appear. Even when Celestials passed by, he did not show up. The Celestials that passed by had a profound cultivation level, and they were even comparable to Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue. Chuli was a little worried about the 2 women, but he could not sense any danger. Moreover, they had void breaching pearls, so they could escape at critical moments. In the evening, the setting sun dyed the ravine red. Chuli sat by the pool and fished. Suddenly, his expression changed. He threw the fishing rod away and ran. Like a gust of wind, he climbed up the precipice and flipped to the peak. Then, he rushed out again. He sensed 10 great Asuras rushing toward him like the wind. It was obviously a premeditated encirclement. After a period of hard cultivation, he could perform the 9 swords in 1/4 times. If the opponent's cultivation level was too high, he might only be able to perform it 2 or 3 times or even once. 10 great Asuras were not enough to perform the 9 swords in one. The first thing he thought of was to escape and defeat them one by one. If they all attacked him at once, he would be in danger. The only way was to use his light body technique to buy time for himself to recover. He shot into the distance like a stream of light. The 10 great Asuras behind him were like a gust of wind as they chased after him. These 10 great Asuras moved almost together and did not split up. It was obvious that they had seen through Chu Li's intentions. Chu Li activated the sacrificial divine power and his speed increased by a few times. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the sight of the 10 great Asuras. They also activated their secret skills to increase their speed and caught up with him again. In the end, after running for a day and a night, Chu Li stopped at the peak of a mountain. Then, he stood on a huge rock. A sword wheel was already floating in the void above his head. It was motionless and silent, but it stopped the 10 great Asuras 10 meters away. Their expressions were serious and tense. They slowly spread out to surround Chu Li. Chu Li used his right hand to form a sword gesture and pointed at one of the great Asuras. He could already tell that this great Asura was the leader of this group. He had the highest cultivation level and was quite prestigious. He was a strong contender for the Asura deity king. Thus, he chuckled and said, "Kill!" Silver light flashed and instantly engulfed this great Asura. Ding 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 ding. Amidst the clear sounds, the great Asura moved his 10 fingers and deflected the 9 swords one by one. His face was as calm as still water. His aura was like a raging wave. The void seemed to be torn apart by his aura. It was earth-shattering. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. Chapter 2230. The middle-aged Asura looked at Chu Li calmly and said, "The legend of the 9 swords merging into one is true. It's not inferior to the Shenhua sword." Chu Li asked, "Who are you?" "Du Kellan." The middle-aged Asura replied, "Remember this name. You'll know who killed him when you reach the underworld." When he said his name, the other 9 great Asuras bowed slightly with fanaticism and worship in their eyes. It was as if they were ready to die for him. Chu Li was shocked. Could it be that the Asura deity king had already been born? Du Kellan stepped in front of Chu Li and the silver light slashed his neck. Swoosh! The 9 swords turned into silver light again and engulfed Du Kellan. Du Kellan took a step back and the silver light met the 9 swords. 3 silver lights collided with each other and there was a clear, ding 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 sound. Chu Li fluttered backward and turned to escape. The 9 swords behind him floated above him and formed a sword wheel. They followed him and disappeared from the great Asura's sight in the blink of an eye. Du Kellan frowned and was about to give chase. "My lord," one of the great Asuras quickly said, "leave it to us. There's no need for you to do it yourself." "All right." Du Kellan looked at them calmly and said, "Don't underestimate him just because I blocked his 9 swords merging into one. Once you attack, you must use a formation. Don't do anything on your own." "Yes." The 9 great Asuras bowed and answered. "Go, catch up to him and kill him." Du Kellan said, "The Asura realm will not allow such a person to live." "Yes." The 9 great Asuras shouted and turned to chase in the direction where Chu Li disappeared. Chu Li moved like lightning and kept the omniscient mirror in that direction. When he saw what Du Kellan said to the 9 great Asuras, he secretly sighed in relief. However, he felt a slight chill in his heart. No matter how he looked at it through the omniscient mirror, Du Kellan's cultivation level was slightly higher. It was not as terrifying as he had experienced it himself. This was the most terrifying part. The 9 great Asuras rushed toward him like a gust of wind. Chu Li ran 200 miles away and stopped in a forest. He quietly watched as they approached. The 9 of them surrounded Chu Li in their respective positions and performed the Asura's palm in the air. Chu Li stomped his foot and the forest shook. A great Asura shouted, "Be careful, it's a formation." The scene in front of them swayed, and the forest turned into a vast ocean. Looking down, they found themselves in the middle of the vast ocean, surrounded by seawater. There was no one on the vast ocean, and they were the only ones swaying with the wave. The waves swayed gently, and he could only sway along with them. His profound cultivation was completely useless here, and he only wanted to paddle with all his might to find the shore or something floating. Unfortunately, there was nothing in the vast sea. They all knew that they were trapped in a formation. Everything was fake, but it was incredibly real. They lowered their heads and drank a mouthful of seawater. It tasted bitter, but it was no different from reality. Furthermore, when it drilled into their stomachs, it was abnormally uncomfortable. Chu stood on the treetop as he watched the great Azura's actions. He shook his head and smiled. If the formation could be broken so easily, it would have been a waste of his painstaking efforts to set it up. After all, they were great Azuras, and ordinary formations could not trap them at all. With the help of the astral force, the power of the array formation increased tremendously. It was so real that their facial features were all affected by the array formation. A shooting star finger silently appeared in front of a great Azura. Tisk! A red light flashed in front of the great Azura. Then, the shooting star finger pierced through the great Azura's chest, leaving a bloody hole. The great Azura's physique was special. The great Azura who was hit by the shooting star finger was not bothered at all. Such a small injury was not worth mentioning to him. He could recover in a short while, and it did not weaken his strength. After the bloody hole appeared, his expression suddenly changed. The astral force lingered in his body. The Azura power technique rushed over to devour it, but the astral force was extremely hard. It could not be devoured in a short while, and its progress was slow. Then, another shooting star finger hit him, and another bloody hole appeared. The two bloody holes were not far apart. The two rays of astral force instantly gathered together and fought against the devouring of the Azura power technique. The third shooting star finger pierced another bloody hole. The shooting star finger increased its power by one more ray, and the three bloody holes kept bleeding. Although the Azura was immortal, he was still made of flesh and blood. As blood gushed out, the great Azura felt weak and indignant. He screamed, "Come out! Come out and attack me from the front if you have the gut. You're just a villain who hides in the dark and shoots arrows." Chu hit him with another shooting star finger. Trapped in the formation, their five senses had been controlled, and they could not sense the shooting star finger's attack. The great Azura, who had a high cultivation level, was now a sheep waiting to be slaughtered. It was a shocking sight. This was the power of the formation. Chu had thought of a backup plan for the past few days. The formation was one of them, and it could be used to save his life at critical moment. Kellen's appearance made him feel threatened, so he used this formation. There were a few other similar formations. Tisk. After adding another two shooting star finger, the great Azura felt his life force being drained. He gritted his teeth and roared, "My lord, I can't serve you anymore. I'll take my leave first." "Wait." A voice rang in his ears. Then, a strange force entered his body and quickly expelled the shooting star finger. Once the shooting star finger was expelled, the great Azura's strength was displayed. The bloody hole closed and the blood stopped flowing. He took a deep breath, and the color on his face returned to normal. Chu squinted his eyes and looked at Kellen, who had appeared beside the great Azura. Kellen instantly broke through the void and the formation's obstruction. He went straight to the great Azura's side and extended his hand to help him. With that, the 10 people surrounded him again. Chu's face darkened. The formation was no longer reliable. Although the other 8 great Azuras were still trapped in the formation, they could not trap Kellen. Kellen alone was enough to kill him. "Very good, Chu." Kellen smiled coldly at Chu. Chu stood on the top of a tree. Kellen's calm gaze met his. He was clearly not affected by the formation. Chu frowned. He took out a jade pendant and tossed it into the sky. The jade pendant immediately turned into a bright light and spread in the sky above the forest. Instantly, the 9 great Azuras' expressions changed. They began to channel and wave their hand. They desperately activated the Azura palm and hit their companions around them. They fought each other. Kellen frowned. He could not sense Chu. He was in the formation and was only relying on his senses. He could not really see Chuli. This time, the formation's power increased greatly. It became more violent, and Chu-Li's aura became faint. Du Kellen shook his head. The aura around him suddenly increased, and the surroundings moved even though there was no wind. It was as if an invisible force was destroying the formation. The area within 2 feet of him was dyed red. On the other hand, Chu-Li's formation was not that easy to break. Even though the area within a 20-foot radius around him was blood-red, barren, and the towering ancient trees had all melted away, Chu-Li's formation continued to operate, causing the 9 great Asuras to kill each other violently and consume their energy. Chu-Li guided the power of heaven's stars from the sky and channeled it continuously into the formation to maintain its operation. His only hope was to eliminate these 9 great Asuras and weaken Du Kellen's power. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive. Chapter 22:31. Du Kellen frowned and pondered, but he did not move. He knew that his subordinate was in a bad situation. The power of this formation was shocking, and he had always looked down on formations. There were not many people in the Grandmaster realm who were proficient in formations. Powerful formations were mostly used to guard sects, and they were rarely used against Asuras. He did not expect to meet a formation master this time. Ordinary formations could not trap him, and only those that were painstakingly set up and took a long time could trap him. However, because of his keen intuition, he could detect the existence of formations and avoid them, unlike this time when he was forcefully trapped. He sighed to himself. It was true that he had to be careful in everything, or else he would fail miserably. Even at this time, he was not worried. No matter how powerful a formation was, it would be useless. The area within 2 feet was his world, and the formation could not invade. As long as he rushed forward, he would be able to break this formation. He strode forward. Bang! With a muffled sound, a strong and strange force collided with the blood-red light. He could not move, and this invisible force had bound him. Hence, he did not give up and urged his inner energy to move forward again. Bang, 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 bang! Amidst the continuous collisions, he kept moving forward and was forced back. The power of the formation extracted the energy of heaven and earth. Otherwise, Chu-Li would not be able to suppress Du Kellen with his own strength. Chu-Li stood at the eye of the formation on the treetop and felt a strong rebound force. If this continued, the formation would be broken by him sooner or later. Du Kellen's cultivation level was too shocking, and the wisest move for him was to escape as far as possible. It would be best if he could leave the extraterrestrial battlefield and come back again when his cultivation level was twice as strong. Unfortunately, he could not escape even if he wanted to. Those red lines had accumulated in his body, and to Du Kellen, finding him was as easy as taking something out of his pocket. The more he ran, the more he wanted to chase after him. The only thing he could do now was to fight him head-on and find a way to injure Du Kellen so that he could escape. If Du Kellen was not injured, he would not have a chance to escape. Streaks of star power descended from the stars in the sky and fell into the formation. Chu-Li had a bad feeling about this, as even the star power could not suppress Du Kellen's power. The energy within 20 feet of his body was extremely strange, as it engulfed everything and nothing could invade it. As soon as the formation's power came into contact with the red mist, it was immediately devoured and turned into the power of the red mist. However, Chu-Li could not figure out what kind of power the red mist was or how powerful it was. Through the observation of the omniscient mirror, Chu-Li felt that it was similar to his heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. It could devour any kind of power, no matter how strong it was. Bam, 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 bam. The heads of the 9 great Asuras were bleeding, and their morale was greatly diminished. Both of them viewed each other as mortal enemies and wished that they could kill each other with a single move. Therefore, they did not hold back in their attacks. If it wasn't for the fact that their cultivations were not too far apart, they would have long since fought to the death. Du Kellen could sense the 9 great Asuras, but the formation was not able to isolate his senses. He could sense that his 9 subordinates were in trouble. Their auras were much weaker, and if this continued, he was afraid that they would die in this formation. He could no longer hide his strength. He took a deep breath and slowly spat out a word, "Break!" Along with this word was a cloud of blood mist. This blood mist was formed from his essence and blood. Its power was astonishing, and it had the power to destroy everything in its path. Wherever the blood mist passed, the power of the formation was rapidly devoured and destroyed. The formation that was originally operating in a mighty manner suddenly became sluggish, and it seemed like it was about to collapse. Chu Li took a deep breath and fiercely struck out with the true supreme Vajrapalm. Rays of golden light fell from the sky. These golden rays were formed from the spiritual energy of the upper heaven, and they turned into golden palms that went against the blood mist. Wherever the golden palms passed, the blood mist was cleared, as if it had been absorbed by the golden palms. The spiritual energy of the upper heaven combined with the true supreme Vajrapalm, and its power was beyond Chu Li's imagination. Chu Li had the heaven's eye, omniscient mirror, and the heavenly star insight, so his judgment was often beyond reason, and it was more like a flash of inspiration. He did not expect the true supreme Vajrapalm to be so powerful. After the formation shook for a while, it returned to normal. Chu Li urged the true supreme Vajrapalm to attack Du Kellen, and the golden palms descended from the sky toward Du Kellen. When the golden palms reached within 20 feet of his body, they quickly shrunk, and by the time they reached him, they had almost disappeared. Chu Li frowned, and he was even more afraid of the blood mist. He could not even get close to this guy, so how was he going to deal with him? Interesting. Du Kellen shook his head calmly, and his hands formed a mudra, and he shouted again, "Break, break, break." 3 mouthfuls of blood mist were spat out. The true supreme Vajrapalm hurriedly met them, but the incredibly fast golden palms could not completely block the blood mist. They could only absorb a part of it, and the remaining half of the blood mist quickly spread, and slowly floated up, combining with the surrounding air. This blood mist slowly drifted to the 9 great Asuras, and they were refreshed. At this time, they realized that they were already heavily injured, and their bodies were exhausted, as if they had fought a hard battle. They all had an impression of this, but how could they not attack when they saw the person they hated the most? Although they were confused about why this damned guy had suddenly appeared, since he had appeared, they had to attack and kill him. They could only blame themselves for not being skilled enough if they were injured by him, so they had to attack even if it was the formation's doing. This was the saying that emotions were greater than reason. Although Asuras were cruel and ruthless, and their other emotions were very cold, to the point of almost non-existent, their hatred was the strongest. Once they had the intention to kill, they would kill the other party no matter how dangerous it was. This was because they were not afraid of death, and at most, they would die once. If they could not kill him this time, they would kill him the next time. Chu Li sighed in relief. Even if this blood mist could awaken the 9 great Asuras' consciousness, it was useless. He took out another jade pendant, crushed it again, and threw it into the sky. A clear light spread and shrouded the formation. The formation trembled slightly, and the 9 great Asuras who had just regained consciousness went crazy again. Once again, the person they hated the most appeared in front of them. Even if they knew that it was a fake, they could not care less. Even if it was a fake, they had to kill it. Du Kellen gritted his teeth. He was only angry at himself for being careless and not bringing a treasure to break the formation. Otherwise, he would not have to waste his blood essence to break the formation. These 9 subordinates were quite capable, and their cultivation levels were also high. If they really died here, it would be a pity, and his path as a deity king would also be shrouded in a shadow. When he thought of this, his killing intent boiled, and a layer of red suddenly appeared on his face. Then, he shot up into the sky. The blood mist shrouded an area of 20 feet around him. Facing the obstruction of the formation, he moved forward with indomitable will. Bang! Like a sudden clap of thunder, he rushed out of the formation. While he was in the air, he saw Chu standing on the top of a towering ancient tree. He immediately laughed coldly, and his body turned like a goshawk catching a rabbit. He swooped down at lightning speed, and instantly appeared in front of Chu. The sword wheel was already floating above Chu-Li's head, and it was silent. At this moment, Chu-Li pointed with a sword gesture with his right hand. Swoosh! The silver light exploded and engulfed Du Kellen. The silver light and the blood mist mixed together. Chu-Li quickly retreated, and the 9 swords flew backward toward him. They no longer had the momentum of the sword wheel. This time, the sword wheel was the most powerful. He had activated the sword technique energy condensed from the 9 energy Cs in one go, and thus released the most powerful sword wheel. Chapter 2232. The 9 swords suddenly sped up and caught up to him before entering their scabbards and scabbards respectively. He was multitasking. Although he had used the sacrificial power to activate the flying divine demon technique, he was still channeling one of the 9 sword. Streams of extremely pure force entered one of his energy Cs. Before the energy Cs were filled, he channeled the 2nd sword technique, then the 3rd. He cycled them in turn instead of waiting until one of his energy Cs was filled to the brim before channeling the 2nd sword technique. Like this, the 9 sword techniques were channeled in turn and the force was stored in the 9 energy Cs one after another. He was still running with all his might. At this time, Du Kellen was still hot on his heels. At this moment, Du Kellen's clothes were in tatters, and he was completely naked. Moreover, his body was covered in blood and covered in rolling wounds. He seemed to be badly mutilated, and he seemed like a person who would die at any moment and was struggling on his deathbed. Chu-Li did not think so. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, Du Kellen was in the most dangerous situation. The force around him was almost solid, as if it was devouring the surrounding void. Even the omniscient mirror was about to be devoured by him. Du Kellen pursed his lips and did not say a word as he stared at Chu-Li from afar. His body shot forward like an arrow. Although he was usually calm and collected, he was boiling with murderous intent. He wanted nothing more than to tear Chu-Li apart and suck his blood. Chu-Li shouted as he ran, "Revered Lord Du, if you don't break that formation, your 9 subordinates will die." Du Kellen was hot on his heels. He was getting closer and closer to Chu-Li. Initially, he was a mile away, but now, he was only 300 meters away. If this continued, he would eventually catch up to Chu-Li. Although Chu-Li had activated the sacrificial power, Du Kellen had also used a secret skill. To outsiders, the two were just 2 shadows. One was white while the other was red. Their figures could not be seen clearly, let alone their faces. Chu-Li's omniscient mirror could see that Du Kellen's wounds were recovering rapidly. While they were talking, there was only a red mark left on the wound. The speed of his recovery was shocking. Chu-Li took a deep breath. Was this the recovery speed of a top-notch Great Azura? His body was so strong that it was almost indestructible. If he fought with this guy, he needed to kill him in one blow. Otherwise, he would recover in the blink of an eye. Chu-Li continued to shout, "The power of that formation will become stronger and stronger. In the end, they will go mad and die. There's no way they can escape. I'll kill you first," Du Kellen said calmly, even though the killing intent in his heart was boiling like lava. Chu-Li shouted, "I can kill you anytime I want, but your 9 subordinates will be dead. Without them, can you really become the deity king? Don't lose your position as the God King because of a personal dispute." The 2 words, God King, jolted Du Kellen. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his boiling body. he immediately sobered up. He turned around and left, his calm voice ringing in Chu Li's ears. "I will take your life." Chu Li sped away without saying a word. Chu Li sighed in relief when he saw that Du Kellen had already drifted far away. The two of them were 3 miles apart. He turned around and walked back. It was impossible for Du Kellen to let him go. Even if he escaped now, he would soon catch up to him. When that time came, he might not be so lucky. The 9 great Asuras were Du Kellen's helpers, but they were also his weakness. Chu Li estimated that if he killed these 9 great Asuras, Du Kellen would go crazy and lose his cool. Although Du Kellen was terrifying when he lost his cool, he would also have a flaw. Chu Li could only kill him. Otherwise, it would be impossible to kill Du Kellen now. Du Kellen's cultivation level was too high and he had a strange skill. If he fought him head-on, he would definitely die. Chu Li followed closely behind. His speed suddenly increased and he was slightly faster than before. Du Kellen, on the other hand, slowed down. After all, he had used a strange skill. Moreover, he had consumed a lot of energy to recover from his injuries. Chu Li's strongest attack had indeed injured him. Chu Li entered the formation before Du Kellen and silently came to the side of a great Asura. The regal sky sword silently swept past the great Asura's neck and cut off his head. Amidst the blood mist, a great Asura's heart flashed and disappeared. The 9 great Asuras fell into a frenzy. Their eyes were bloodshot and their techniques were scattered. They could not kill their target. This made them impatient and tyrannical. They were on the verge of going crazy. Chu Li approached them silently. He used the power of the formation to hide his body. When the regal sky sword reached their necks, it was already too late for them to dodge. Du Kellen could sense the 9 great Asuras. Even the formation could not isolate them. When he sensed the death of one of his subordinates, he was shocked. He could not care less about recovering his inner energy. He suddenly sped up and arrived beside the forest. However, his speed could not match up to Chu Li's regal sky sword. When Du Kellen arrived beside the forest, the 9 people in the formation had already been killed by Chu Li. "Ah!" Du Kellen roared at the sky. His voice was hoarse and angry. A strong wind suddenly rose around him. He could not see the situation inside the formation. He felt that the 9 people had died. He thought that it was the formation that caused it. He did not think that it was Chu Li's doing. At this moment, Chu Li was inside the formation. The red thread quickly entered his body. It quickly merged with his blood and then entered his heart. He felt that his body had become slightly stronger. This kind of strength was different from cultivating his inner energy and increasing his cultivation level. It came from the strength of his physical body. Chu Li knew that it would be difficult to hide it from Du Kellen. Du Kellen was currently immersed in guilt and rage. He could not sense it carefully. Otherwise, he would definitely notice that Chu Li was inside the formation. Chu Li threw out another piece of jade pendant. The jade pendant exploded in the air and turned into a blue light. This blue light spread out. The formation suddenly shook and formed a chaotic formation. All kinds of energy from heaven and earth gathered and collided with each other. It was extremely chaotic. He sat cross-legged inside the formation. He desperately urged the 9 sword techniques and strived to fill up his 9 sea of aura. Du Kellen felt that the formation was strange. It seemed that after this formation devoured his 9 subordinates, it began to become chaotic and was about to collapse on its own. Moreover, there was a faint sense of familiarity in this formation. He focused and immediately felt Chu Li's presence. After thinking about it, he immediately understood that Chu Li had killed his 9 subordinate. Chu Li had returned to the formation before him and killed his 9 subordinates. At this moment, he was even more furious. He felt that as a revered lord, he had been fooled by a small fellow. His trusted subordinates had been killed in front of his eyes. As a revered lord, he was too useless. If he wanted to become the deity king, how could he convince the masses? At this moment, his desire to kill Chu Li was boiling. It rushed into his mind. He wanted to kill this fellow at all costs to erase this humiliation. Ah! He roared and shot into the forest. He rushed into the formation. Chu Li stood up and fiercely injected star power into the sky. Then, his feet fluttered as he ran out of the forest in a strange manner. In a few moments, he had flashed out of the forest and escaped far away. Boom! In the midst of an earth-shattering noise, the formation completely collapsed. The earth shook violently. The forest within a 2-mile radius was flattened. All the towering ancient trees disappeared without a trace. Only a figure stood proudly. It was Du Kellen. 9 treasure swords were already floating above Chu Li's head. They formed a sword wheel, and then turned into a ball of silver light that shot towards Du Kellen. Die! Du Kellen roared in anger. His whole body turned into a ball of bloody light that shot towards the silver light. Boom! In the earth-shattering noise, the 9 swords were scattered. Du Kellen's bloody light continued to rush towards Chu Li. Chapter 2233. Chu Li was shocked. First, he was injured by the collapse of the formation, then he was hit by the full force of the 9 swords, but Du Kellen did not die. Moreover, his aura was monstrous and did not show any signs of weakening. What a shocking cultivation level and body! If such a monster was not killed, there would be no peace. Du Kellen turned into a red light and rushed over. Chu Li went forward to meet him. He did not believe that Du Kellen was not heavily injured. This was the best opportunity to kill him, even if it would result in both of them being injured. Just as the red light that Du Kellen had transformed into was about to collide with Chu Li, he suddenly accelerated and brushed past Chu Li's shoulder. Du Kellen had actually escaped at a speed that was beyond Chu Li's imagination. Chu Li could not catch up even after activating the sacrificial divine power and the soaring divine demon technique. Chu Li quickly shouted, "Revered Lord Du, aren't you going to avenge your subordinates? Haha, they died a quick death without any pain." He wanted to provoke Du Kellen. The death of 9 subordinates should be a pain in Du Kellen's heart. He might turn around and kill him on the spot. Du Kellen's figure suddenly turned and disappeared. His voice came from afar, calm as usual. "I'll repay you for today's kindness." Chu Li said, "Why wait? I'll repay you today." Eh. Du Kellen sneered softly, his voice already faintly discernible. Chu Li followed closely and leaped to the top of a mountain. He saw the red light getting further and further away before it completely disappeared. He helplessly gave up the chase and shook his head as he stood at the top of the mountain. He was really lucky to be able to escape and escape with his life this time. If Du Kellen had brought a formation-breaking treasure, he might not have been able to escape with his life. He initially thought that he could go anywhere in the world after mastering the 9 swords in one, but he did not expect it to be even more difficult. A cool breeze blew gently, and the sun was shining brightly in the sky. The bright and beautiful sunlight shone on his body, but it didn't feel warm at all. His whole body was cold, and he was thinking about what this Du Kellen was, and what the so-called Supreme Lord was. If there were more people like him in the Azure realm, he should just stay in the Grandmaster realm and not come to the foreign battlefield. Fortunately, Shao-Chi had a void-breaching pearl, or else he would have to bring her away. This place was too dangerous and not a place for young masters. He should let the old demons in the Grandmaster realm take action. However, there was only one void-breaching pearl which was given to Shao-Chi. Sun Mingyue did not have it. He followed his senses and floated forward. Along the way, he encountered any great Azuras and killed them without hesitation. There was no point in hiding now. No matter how much he tried to keep a low profile, Du Kellen would still be able to find him. Moreover, killing great Azuras could also strengthen him. On the second day, his expression suddenly changed. He sensed that Sun Mingyue's situation was not good. She had already encountered a powerful enemy, and her qi activity was weakening. He could no longer afford to conserve his strength. He activated the self-sacrificing divine art and turned into a shadow. He used 2 hours to travel for a day and appeared in the depths of a forest. There, he saw Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue was surrounded and attacked by 10 great Asuras. Her white robe was stained with blood, and the white veil on her face was also dyed red. Her eyes, which were like limpid autumn waters, were already dim. She was almost at the end of her rope. These 10 great Asuras had profound cultivation and were only slightly inferior to the 9 great Asuras. Clearly, they were considered top-notch masters among the great Asuras. It was extremely rare for Sun Mingyue to be able to hold on until now despite fighting against 10 great Asuras on her own. Her advantage was that her energy was pure, and the great light scripture was mysterious, so her chi meridian was long. Moreover, she also had the supreme titanium supreme scripture. If it was someone else with the same cultivation level, they would have been killed by the 10 great Asuras long ago. Chu Li did not stop activating the self-sacrificing divine art. The 9 swords rose into the sky and turned into a sword wheel. Then, he pointed his sword and a silver light shot out with a whoosh, appearing in front of one of the great Asuras. Before the great Asura could react, the silver light had already turned into nothingness. The silver light continued to rush toward another great Asura and engulfed 6 great Asuras in one breath. Then, the silver light dissipated and the 9 swords shot back into Chu Li's sword case and scabbard. The remaining 4 great Asuras looked solemn and could not hide their shock. This silver light was too shocking. They had goosebumps when they saw it, and they almost wanted to turn around and escape without hesitation. However, they knew that the silver light was so fast that it was impossible to escape. They had to fight even if they had to die. Therefore, they glared at the 9 swords, and their eyes fell on Chu Li. Their bodies tensed up, and they could not care less about Sun Mingyue. Chu Li took a step to Sun Mingyue's side and held her slender waist. A faint fragrance entered his nose, and the supreme titanium supreme scripture circulated between them. He was now mobilizing the spiritual energy from the upper heaven and converting it into the supreme titanium supreme scripture's inner energy, so he was far stronger than Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue was already exhausted, but now that she had the help of Chu Li's inner energy, she was instantly energized, and her weakness was swept away. She gently twisted her waist and scoffed. "Why are you here?" Chu Li held Sun Mingyue and shook his head. "Why are you alone?" "I'm free," Sun Mingyue replied. "All right, let's get rid of the 4 of them first." Chu Li knew that she was still angry, so he changed the topic. Sun Mingyue glanced at him with her clear eyes and scoffed. "All right." Chu Li glanced at the great Asuras who were on high alert and ready to die together with him. He said, "I have a great Asura friend, do you guys know him?" The 4 great Asuras frowned at him. Chu Li said, "Du Kellen, do you guys know him?" "Impossible." The 4 great Asuras shouted in a low voice. Chu Li laughed. "Why is it impossible? I saved his life before, so we can't be friends because of our different identities. Do you know who revered Master Du is? How can you save him?" One of the great Asuras shouted. Chu Li said, "He didn't tell me his identity, only his name. He said that if I meet top-notch masters like you, as long as I tell you my name, you'll naturally bury the hatchet and not make things difficult for me." As he spoke to the 4 of them, he used the omniscient mirror to observe their mind. Fortunately, he was no longer the same as before. When he focused, he could faintly see what the 4 great Asuras were thinking. "When did you meet revered Master Du?" One of the great Asuras shouted. Chu Li thought for a while and said, 10 years ago. "That's impossible. Revered Master Du has a noble identity. How can he simply come to the foreign battlefield?" The 4 great Asuras shook their heads. Chu Li said, He also said that he was busy and came out to relax, but he didn't expect to be surrounded by a group of great Azuras. I was curious, so I saved him, just like the situation now. The 4 great Azuras frowned and looked at him, doubtful. Chu Li continued, "What's the identity of a revered master? Is Du Kellan a revered master?" The 4 great Azuras' first reaction was that Chu Li and Du Kellan were not enemies, because in their understanding, those who had enmity with Du Kellan would not be alive and would have died long ago. Therefore, most of them believed Chu Li's words, but the other half found it unbelievable. How could an Azura be friends with a celestial? One of the great Azuras said, "Under the deity king, there are 4 revered masters." Chu Li came to a realization. "I didn't know that Du Kellan was so noble. It's such a pity that I never got to meet him." "Are you really friends with revered Master Du?" one of the great Azuras shouted. Chapter 2234. Are you Du Kellan's subordinates? Chu Li asked gently as he glanced at Sun Mingyue. "Let's forget about this misunderstanding to avoid hurting my relationship with Du Kellan. Although he did say that we don't have to worry about each other, it won't affect our relationship. We're Great Lord Lu's subordinates." The 4 great Azuras shook their heads. They stared at him with serious expressions. Chu Li sighed. "Great Lord Lu? Lu Feijie?" The 4 great Azuras' expressions changed drastically. This time, they completely believed Chu Li's words because other than Great Lord Du, the Devas would not know Great Lord Lu's name. They did not even know who Great Lord Lu was. Since Great Lord Lu's name was known, it was obvious that Great Lord Du had a close relationship with him. Chu Li shook his head. "If that's the case, you should leave. I know that Du Kellan has a bad relationship with Lu Feijie. The great Azura that killed him was Lu Feijie's subordinate." "All right then, we'll take our leave." The 4 great Azuras' fist saluted and turned to leave. They stood in front of Chu Li with goosebumps all over their bodies. Their hearts were constantly warning them to leave and disappear immediately. Now that they could finally leave, even if they were not afraid of death, it was better not to die if they could avoid it. Chu Li suddenly asked, "Can I ask around, how many subordinates does a great lord have?" "Countless," the 4 great Azuras said in a low voice. Chu Li nodded. "It seems like Du Kellan has a lot of power. What a pity." He sized up the 4 great Azuras and said, "If you want to leave, you should leave something behind. You can't beat up my friend and almost kill her for no reason." "What is it?" the 4 great Azuras asked. Chu Li replied, "Your lives." As soon as he said that, the 9 swords rose into the air again and turned into a ball of silver light that shot toward the 4 great Azuras. At the same time, he grabbed Sun Mingyue and retreated at lightning speed, still activating the sacrificial divine power. The silver light silently crushed one great Azura, then another. In the end, the 2 great Azuras suddenly exploded into 2 clouds of bloody mist. If Chu Li had not pulled Sun Mingyue away in time, he would have been caught in the blast. Bam bam! The 2 clouds of blood mist let out a dull sound, showing how fast they were. The 9 swords returned to their scabbards and scabbards. Chu Li's face turned pale as he quickly stopped the sacrificial divine power. Sun Mingyue stared at him with a frown. Chu Li heaved a sigh of relief. 10 red lines floated into his body, and he could feel his body strengthening slightly. Ever since he entered the foreign battlefield this time, he had killed so many great Azuras that his body had strengthened by about 10%. This was already an extremely impressive improvement. Unfortunately, this upgrade was accompanied by a blinding light. To the great Azuras, the light on his body was probably already very dazzling, and they would definitely kill him as soon as possible. "You're getting more and more amazing. This 9 swords into 1 is indeed extraordinary," Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li smiled. "I can only use it a few times. It's very restrictive and I've caused a lot of trouble." As he spoke, he told them about Du Kellan. Sun Mingyue frowned and said, "This is indeed a big problem. What do you want to do?" Chu Li shook his head. "Leave the foreign battleground as soon as possible, or else I'll really die in his hands." He had no confidence in fighting Du Kellen. If they were to meet again, Du Kellen would definitely have a treasure that could restrain formations. Without the help of formations, he would definitely not be Du Kellen's match, and he would definitely die. The difference in their cultivation levels was too great, and it was impossible for him to catch up in a short period of time. It was like a child fighting an adult. No matter how powerful they would not be able to win. "It seems like a big shot has been mobilized this time," Sun Mingyue said softly. "A big shot from Taihao Peak has been mobilized." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Sun Mingyue said, "I heard it's Masters Junior from the previous generation, Lu Jianfei." Chu Li said, "It seems like they also know about the ruler of God. Although the sects don't know about this, how can Heaven-Shaking Pavilion not know?" Sun Mingyue scoffed. "Of course, we have to inform Taihao Peak." "Then, nobody from the other sects informed." Chu Li frowned. "Are they just going to let these young disciples die? Taihao Peak and Heaven-Shaking Pavilion have also sent out most of their young disciples." Sun Mingyue shook her head. "We can't let the young disciples hide in the sect, can we?" Chu Li slowly shook his head. Sun Mingyue said, "Logically speaking, those old demons won't bother with young disciples. Take that Du Kellen for example. Logically speaking, he won't bother with you when he sees you and will just walk past you." Chu Li sighed and nodded. He had already thought it through. If he had not combined the 9 swords into one and killed so many powerful great Asuras, Du Kellen would not bother with him. However, when they met by chance, he felt that Chu Li was a scourge and wanted to get rid of him. Unfortunately, Du Kellen did not expect Chu Li to have the strength to fight back and escape. This time, he was determined to kill Chu Li. Sun Mingyue smiled. "Who asked you to be so powerful that you provoked someone like Du Kellen? You can only ask Masters Junior Lu for help. He should be able to stop Du Kellen." "All right." Chu Li slowly nodded. Since he was obviously no match for Du Kellen, he would not force himself to fight him. He was not that brave. If he really met Du Kellen, he would not run away and would only fight with his life. If there were other ways to deal with him, he would have to think of them. Borrowing someone else's strength to fight him was a good idea. Killing Du Kellen, who was a fatal threat, was the most important thing. If Du Kellen could not kill him, he would go crazy and attack Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue. By then, it would be too late for Chu Li to cry. Chu Li recalled the situation just now and said unhappily, "Why didn't you ask for help when you were in such a predicament? What's the point of asking for help?" Sun Mingyue shook her head. "There are no Taihao Peak disciples within 100 miles. It's useless to ask for help." Chu Li sighed. "Then let's look for Masters Junior Lu. I guess Du Kellen can't wait to come after us." "Let's go," Sun Mingyue said. As they hurried along, they talked about what happened after they parted ways. After Sun Mingyue entered the foreign battlefield alone, she was not in a hurry to kill Asuras. She only attacked when she was surrounded by Asuras. She wanted to understand Asura's habits so that she could kill them better. Later on, she came to understand the Asuras. They were extremely fast when it came to killing, which provoked the great Asuras. 2 great Asuras died in her hands, then 4, and then 10. They almost killed her. It's all right," Sun Mingyue smiled. "I'm not fated to die." Chu Li's face darkened as he glared at her coldly. He was very displeased. Sun Mingyue smiled and found a place to change her clothes. She returned to her snow-white robe and looked extremely beautiful. 3 days later, the two of them found Lu Jianfei of Taihao Peak in the morning. Lu Jianfei was a short and ugly middle-aged man. His face was full of bumps and pits. He had small eyes, a big mouth, and a flat nose. He did not look like a peerless master at all. Beside Lu Jianfei was a Taihao Peak disciple, Huang Yu. Huang Yueying was extremely handsome and his figure was tall and straight. Compared to him, Lu Jianfei looked even uglier. When Huang Yu saw Chu Li and Sun Mingyue, he stared at Chu Li with bright eyes and glanced at Sun Mingyue. Junior sister's son, why are you with him? Sun Mingyue curtsied. Senior brother Huang. She then bowed to Lu Jianfei, who was smiling. Master's Junior Lu. Mingyue, this is? Lu Jianfei smiled amiably. Oh, it's that Chu Li, right? The new Taihao Peak disciples were two stunning beauties. They were also love rivals. This news had spread throughout Taihao Peak. He had also heard about it and knew about Chu Li. He was even envious of Chu Li's luck with women. He sized Chu Li up and chuckled. It's an honor to meet you. Chu Li fist saluted and smiled. Greetings, Senior Lu. Chapter 2235. Sun Mingyue said, Masters Junior Lu, Chu Li is in big trouble, so I came to ask for help. Lu Jianfei smiled. Chu Li's cultivation level is not weak, it's almost the same as Kai Wei, right? He's not a threat even if he met a great Azura. What kind of trouble did he encounter? Chu Li fist saluted and smiled. To be honest, Senior Lu, I met Du Kellen. Du Kellen. Lu Jianfei was shocked. He stopped smiling. You met him? Chu Li nodded. I killed a few of his subordinates, then he chased after me. Lu Jianfei looked at him from head to toe, amazed. Huang Yu looked at Lu Jianfei in confusion. Lu Jianfei explained, Xiao Yu, you don't know Du Kellen, right? Huang Yu shook his head. Is he an important person in Azura? Azura has the ruler of deity, and under him are 4 supreme lords, each leading a region. They are the ruler of deity's left and right arms. Huang Yu's expression was solemn. The ruler of deity was the number 1 master in Azura, and the 4 supreme lords under him were probably second only to him. They were really impressive people, and Chu Li was able to survive after offending such people. It was really impressive. Lu Jianfei smiled at Chu Li. Xiao Chu, tell me, what's going on? Chu Li told him everything that had happened, including how he had used the 9 swords as one and the formation to severely injure Du Kellen. He could already feel how powerful Lu Jianfei was. In front of Lu Jianfei, he felt the same as when he met Du Kellen. He could not see through him. It was as if his cultivation level was ordinary, but also as vast as the sea, unfathomable. Such people needed to be treated with sincerity. They hated being lied to the most. They would not be offended if they told the truth, no matter what intentions they had, as long as they told the truth, were honest and selfless, and did not lie. Lu Jianfei looked at Chu Li with a strange gaze. He slowly nodded. Impressive. Impressive. Huang Yu frowned at Chu Li. His feelings towards Chu Li were extremely contradictory. On one hand, he admired Chu Li's profound martial arts and shocking cultivation level. On the other hand, he admired Chu Li's extraordinary ability to reach this stage by relying on unorthodox method. His aptitude and comprehension were both outstanding, and he was also extremely lucky. At the same time, he was a little annoyed because he had stolen his limelight and was too close to junior sister Fu. Even if he already had 2 women, Xiao Qi and Sun Mingyue, he was still a threat and junior sister Fu might be tempted. Junior sister Fu's way of thinking was different from ordinary people. She would not even look at an ordinary man. Chu Li's cultivation level was high, and his way of doing things was to junior sister Fu's liking. He even wanted to help her take revenge. To him, it was extremely dangerous. It would be best if she could drive him away from junior sister Fu. If not for junior sister Fu, the 2 of them might have become friends. Chu Li smiled. Senior Lu, I've only just mastered the 9 swords in one, so its power hasn't reached its peak yet. It's far from the legendary power. Why don't you give me some pointers? He felt that if he didn't show some ability, Lu Jianfei might not believe him completely. Sure, I'd like to see it for myself. Lu Jianfei smiled. He was indeed a little doubtful. From what he knew, Du Kellen's cultivation level was so high that Chu Li could not fight against him. Even with the formation and the 9 swords in one, it would be difficult for him to win, let alone injure Du Kellen. If he was so gullible, he would not have survived until now. There were also Taihao Peak disciples who died along the way. Chu Li nodded. The 9 swords rose into the air and condensed into a sword wheel. Chu Li pinched a sword gesture with his right hand and pointed at Lu Jianfei. Senior Lu, be careful. A silver light flashed and engulfed Lu Jianfei. Ding 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 ding. The long sword at Lu Jianfei's waist turned into a snow-white brilliance, like thousands of pear flowers blooming. The 9 swords retreated and flew back into the sword scabbard. Chu Li fist saluted and praised. Senior Lu, good swordsmanship. He did not use his full strength in this attack. It was just a normal attack. As he killed the great Azura, his physical body became stronger and he realized that his 9C of aura had widened. He could perform the 9 swords in 1/6 times. Lu Jianfei did not use his full strength to block it. If he used his full strength, he might be able to block it. That's all? Not enough. Lu Jianfei shook his head. Chu Li said, Senior Lu, watch again. The 9 swords left the scabbard and flew into the air to condense into a sword wheel. Then, it turned into a ball of silver light that engulfed Lu Jianfei. This time, the silver light did not change in size, but it was faster. It reached him in an instant and there was no way to avoid it. Bang! Lu Jianfei's long sword flew out. He flew 30 feet in the air, and caught the long sword in the air before floating down. It was hard to tell if he flew out to chase after the long sword or if he caught the long sword after being hit. However, when he landed, his face turned red and returned to normal. Then, it turned red again and returned to normal. After this happened 3 times, he finally calmed down. Chu Li fist saluted. Lu Jianfei stared at Chu Li. What a 9 swords in one! Chu Li smiled. Senior, do you believe me now? It's not bad. No wonder you could injure Du Kellen. Lu Jianfei said slowly. Chu Li was not afraid that he did not believe him because the 9 swords in one was slightly stronger than when he fought against Du Kellen. This was the gain from killing more than 20 great Azuras. After the sea of aura expanded, the power of a full force attack was stronger. Huang Yu looked at Chu Li in shock. When the silver light appeared, he shuddered and had the urge to escape. There was no chance of winning at all. Chu Li said, if it wasn't for the formation that injured him first and then the 9 swords in one, I wouldn't have been able to hurt Du Kellen. Lu Jianfei frowned. If that's the case, his cultivation level is higher than mine? Chu Li nodded slowly. Impossible. Huang Yu scoffed. Chu Li looked at him and said seriously, Senior Brother Huang, why would I lie? This isn't a joke. Lu Jianfei said, looks like we have to work together. Chu Li said, Senior Lu. Lu Jianfei waved his hand. Say no more. Since you're here and you're not an outsider, if I don't fight and retreat, what kind of person would I be? Senior Lu, I'm just afraid. Chu Li sighed. Huang Yu quickly said, Masters Junior Lu, it's better for us to find a few more people to fight Du Kellen. Chu Li nodded slowly. This was exactly what he wanted. Huang Yu stared at him. Chu Li, what do you think? Chu Li said, what Senior Brother Huang said makes sense. Huang Yu looked at Lu Jianfei. Lu Jianfei said, Du Kellen is an honorable lord. He won't appear if there are too many people. Chu Li said, Senior Lu, you don't have to worry about this. He won't be able to control himself when he sees me. Even if he's smart as an Azura, he can't control his nature. He'll definitely rush over. He knew that Du Kellen hated him and was boiling with murderous intent. If he were to meet him, even if Lu Jianfei or other masters from Taihao Peak were by his side, Du Kellen would definitely attack him. Lu Jianfei shook his head. Don't underestimate him. Chu Li said, how about this, Senior Lu? Let's maintain a distance of 100 miles. Even if he appears, I'm confident that I can escape 100 miles away. That's great. Lu Jianfei nodded. Chu Li looked at Sun Mingyue. As long as Sun Mingyue is by your side, I'll know where you are. That's great. Lu Jianfei smiled at Sun Mingyue. He guessed that it was a secret skill between lovers that allowed them to sense each other. Chapter 2236. Chu Li smiled and waved his hand. He gave Lu Jianfei and Huang Yu a fist salute and smiled. Then, he glided away and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. His light body technique was as fast as a ghost, which made Huang Yu shiver. He knew that he did not have such a light body technique. Sun Mingyue frowned and stared at his back. She felt that it was very dangerous this time. For a person like Du Kellen, once he made a move, it would be a thunderous blow, and he would absolutely not give him a chance to escape. Last time, he had already revealed all his trump cards, and the next time Du Kellen made a move, it would definitely be extremely dangerous. Huang Yu looked at Lu Jianfei and said, "Martial Uncle Lu, why did you agree so easily? He's just using someone else to do his dirty work. He's not an outsider, how can we not help?" Lu Jianfei said with a smile, "This isn't the way our Great Sky Peak does things. That depends on the situation and the person." Huang Yu scoffed. "He has sinister intentions. I don't believe that Martial Uncle Lu can't see it. He said it out in the open, so he didn't have any evil intentions." Lu Jianfei shook his head and said, "Besides, if we can seize the opportunity to eliminate this Du Kellen, it'll be a great matter of boundless virtue. This Du Kellen must be very difficult to deal with. I'm just afraid that we'll end up empty-handed and end up losing our strength," said Huang Yu with a frown. He turned to Sun Mingyue, who was glaring at him, and said, "Junior sister Sun, I'm not targeting Chu Li. I'm just stating the facts." Sun Mingyue said, "This is a rare opportunity to kill a High Lord. Could it be that our Great Sky Peak will only pick the weak ones? Sun, are you only going to kill the small ones? Sincerely bad research? Tired? Jian Song adds bandage search Chiao? Suddenly change into a curtained and desolate curtain." Mingyue's words make sense. Lu Jianfei nodded and said, "This is a rare opportunity. Usually, these big shots of Azura hide in the Azura realm and don't come out." Sigh. Huang Yu shook his head and said, "I still feel that something is wrong. This Du Kellen is not easy to deal with. What if he brings a lot of people here? Will Chu Li escape? No matter how strong he is, we still have to think of a way to get rid of him." Lu Jianfei patted Huang Yu, not blaming him for being petty. Chu Li knew that Du Kellen would not be able to find him anytime soon, so the key was to kill as many great Azuras as possible. Those red lines were eye-catching and also had the effect of strengthening one's body. Right now, he was already able to unleash one more 9 swords in one. If he killed a few dozen more of them, he might be able to unleash 2 more, and the might of the 9 swords in one would be even stronger. At that time, he might even be able to fight against Du Kellen. With this motivation, he circled around Sun Mingyue in a radius of more than 200 miles, continuously sweeping through the surrounding area, killing any great Azuras he saw without mercy. In 2 days' time, he had already killed more than 10 great Azuras. Most importantly, there were too many red lines on his body, which were extremely eye-catching to great Azuras. All of them wanted to kill him to gain a great merit, but they were killed by Chu Li before they could even get close to him. The number of red lines on his body increased, which made him even more eye-catching. His body also became slightly stronger, but unfortunately, it was not enough to increase his attack. That evening, he stood on top of a mountain, facing the whistling night wind and admiring the sunset glow. The scenery of the extraterrestrial battlefield was magnificent, a magnificence that was rarely seen in the outland. The sky seemed to have been poured with golden liquid, with patches of gold in the east and in the west. It was indescribably magnificent. Suddenly, a clear whistle was heard from afar. Chu Li became alert, and the omniscient mirror descended from the sky to the ground. He saw Fu Kaiwei in her fluttering yellow robe, who was being chased by 4 great Asuras. Fu Kaiwei's yellow robe fluttered as she fought and escaped at the same time. She was at a disadvantage. The 4 great Asuras had profound cultivation levels, similar to Du Kellen's subordinates. They were already top-notch existences among the great Asuras. Moreover, the 4 of them were adept at attacking together, and had great teamwork. They advanced and retreated together, so Fu Kaiwei had no way to attack. Chu Li focused his attention and faintly noticed that her body was glowing red. This was an ability that his omniscient mirror had begun to show after a few days of research. He could see the glow emitted by the red lines after they fused into her body. Fu Kaiwei's red glow meant that she had killed many Asuras, and even more than him. When he thought about Fu Kaiwei's cultivation level and mystical skills, it was not surprising that she had killed more great Asuras than him. It was precisely because of this that these 4 great Asuras with such profound cultivation levels were attracted to her. Fu Kaiwei must have been chased by these 4 great Asuras after a tough battle. Otherwise, she would not be in such a sorry state. He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he watched from the side, wanting to see Fu Kaiwei's ultimate move. After a while, Fu Kaiwei was only dodging as she fled. Her body was weak, and it was obvious that she had suffered serious injuries. He shook his head. He could not delay any longer. Otherwise, it would be his fault if Fu Kaiwei used a suicidal move. He let out a soft whistle, and his body turned into a flash of lightning as he activated the sacrificial divine power. Like a ghost, he appeared beside Fu Kaiwei in a flash. The 9 swords rose into the sky, and then turned into a silver light that shot toward the 4 great Asuras. The 4 great Asuras attacked the silver light at the same time. The silver light flashed in the air and made a turn. Chu Li's 9C of energy rushed out with the sword technique's inner energy once again, and instantly caught up with the silver light. Then, the silver light suddenly became brighter. Chu Li formed a sword technique with his right hand and pointed at the 4 great Asuras. The silver light suddenly arrived in front of the 4 great Asuras. They pushed their palms forward at the same time, and 4 Asuras' divine palms converged together. TSS. The silver light whistled and then engulfed them. In the midst of the bloody mist, the 9 treasure swords flew back to hover above his head and formed a sword wheel. In the bloody mist, 4 Heart of Asura vaguely appeared, and then quickly disappeared. The bloody mist quickly dissipated, and there was nothing in the surroundings. It was as if the 4 great Asuras had never appeared. The bloody mist seemed to be real, and yet illusory at the same time, making it difficult to tell which was the real one. Fu Kaiwei looked at Chu Li in surprise. She realized that the power of the 9 swords as one had become stronger, so she quickly closed her eyes and channeled. Chu Li guarded her, and stared at the forest beside them. The 9 swords sword wheel above his head slowly rotated, as if it would turn into a ball of silver light and shoot out at any time. He sensed that there were 4 great Asuras hiding in the forest, and their cultivation levels were not inferior to the 4 who had died earlier. It was obvious that one of them was in the open, and the other was in the dark. Chu Li wanted to launch a sneak attack, but he did not have the chance to do so. When Fu Kaiwei opened her eyes, the force around her body stabilized again, and she let out a long sigh of relief. "You've saved me again." Chu Li smiled. "You've met a tough opponent this time?" The killing was very satisfying. Fu Kaiwei smiled sweetly. "Have you seen junior sister Xiao?" Chu Li shook his head. "Is she alone?" Fu Kaiwei said, "Most of the Taihao Peak disciples kill alone. If they're in a group, it'll lose the purpose of training." Chu Li slowly nodded. Taihao Peak had its own pride, and even if it was dangerous, they would not travel in a group. Xiao Qi looked indifferent, but she was actually proud. After all, she came from an extraordinary family, and she was born with a proud character, so she naturally wanted to be alone. Nevertheless, she had the void-breaching pearl, so Chu Li was not worried. "Don't worry, junior sister Xiao is very cautious," Fu Kaiwei said. "How about you?" Chu Li shook his head. At that moment, the 9 swords above his head suddenly turned into a ball of silver light and shot into the forest. Swoosh! Wherever the silver light passed, the trees swayed, and then a bloody mist appeared in the forest again, but it soon disappeared. The 9 swords shot back and returned to their sheaths in the case. 6 red lines slowly entered his body, and he trembled slightly. With the accumulation of the previous killings, he felt that his body had become stronger, and with the 9 Cs of energy, he could increase the power of the 9 swords as one attack. Chapter 2237. It was a wonderful feeling. Although killing an Azura had many consequences, this one benefit was enough to make him unable to extricate himself. As long as he kept getting stronger, he would be able to escape from Du Kellen. He might even be able to take the opportunity to injure Du Kellen, or even kill him. As soon as he thought of this, he could not help but grow stronger and stronger until he was unable to extricate himself. Du Kellen was one of the 4 venerable lords. If he really killed him, it would have a huge impact on the Azura boundary. It would be considered a heavy blow to the Azura boundary and one less candidate to become the Azura deity king. He then thought that if he could eliminate the 4 venerable lords, the Azura deity king would be the weakest in history and the Azura boundary would not be that scary. As soon as he thought of this, he could not stop himself. Soon, his rationality made him understand that it was just a dream. He had to escape from Du Kellen first. Fu Kaiwei frowned as she looked into the depths of the forest, then at Chu Li. She did not notice the great Azura in the forest, but Chu Li did. Could it be that Chu Li's cultivation level was higher than hers? Chu Li said, "I met Senior Lu Jianfei earlier." "Masters Junior Lu?" Fu Kaiwei sighed. "It's a pity for Masters Junior Lu. He used to be the number 1 master of his generation." She was the number 1 master of her generation, while Lu Jianfei was from the previous generation. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He had never heard of Lu Jianfei's name. Fu Kaiwei said, "Have you never heard of Masters Junior Lu?" Chu Li shook his head. Fu Kaiwei sighed. "It's a pity that Masters Junior Lu is trapped by love." Chu Li said, "Is it because he likes a woman who doesn't like him or a woman he shouldn't like?" Being trapped by love was nothing more than that. 2 people who loved each other had obstacles and could not be together in the end. He had seen too many of these in his past life. It was not a big deal, life was not all about love. Fu Kaiwei sighed. He fell in love with a witch. Chu Li smiled. That woman doesn't like him? Not only was Lu Jianfei not handsome, but he was also ugly. People were judged by their appearance. It was the same for both men and women. Appearance was the stepping stone. Without this stepping stone, one would not be able to enter the door, not to mention talent and inner qualities. Although Lu Jianfei's martial arts skill was good, he was ugly. Women might respect him, but it would be very difficult for them to fall in love with him, unless it was a woman with a different way of thinking. But this kind of woman was rare in the world. He might not necessarily have the luck to meet one. Moreover, to an average person, this kind of woman was even more difficult to deal with. It was possible that they did not care about their appearance, but rather their talent. However, talent was an illusory thing that could disappear without any warning. Fu Kaiwei shook her head gently. He fell in love with a Skyfiend realm woman. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. The witch. Exactly. Fu Kaiwei sighed. Masters Junior Lu liked the witch, and the woman liked him too. They loved each other deeply. Unfortunately, their identities determined that they could not be together. After the woman's identity was exposed, Masters Junior Lu begged the peak leader for mercy. The peak leader spared the woman's life, but he forced her to swear never to enter the Grandmaster's boundary. Chu Li frowned and sighed. Fate makes fools of people. They did nothing wrong. Masters Junior Lu and the witch were innocent, and the peak leader did nothing wrong. We can only blame their identities. Fu Kaiwei said. From then on, Masters Junior Lu became a nobody. Even when he left the mountain, he never revealed his name. He treated himself as if he was dead and became a walking corpse. He looked cheerful, but he was actually suffering inside. Chu Li said, since we're not fated to be together, let's just look at each other in the martial arts world. If we're fated, we'll meet again in the next life. There's no need to suffer so much. If you can't see Shao Qi again, won't it be painful? Fu Kaiwei scoffed. Chu Li smiled. Senior sister Fu might not know about what happened between me and my wife. Back then, she cut off her feelings for me in order to cultivate the regal sword scripture. We were like strangers, but I didn't think much of it. When he broke up with Shao Qi, it was because of a belief that supported him. He always believed that he could win Shao Qi's heart again, so he only thought about how to win her heart again and did not feel too much pain. Fu Kaiwei rolled her eyes at him. Then you're a heartless person. Chu Li frowned. Masters Junior Lu's cultivation level is so high, but he can't find a way to meet the witch? Unless Masters Junior Lu cultivates the heavenly demonic power, it's impossible for him to enter the heavenly demonic realm. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. Chu Li thought about it and said, I have a way to let Masters Junior Lu enter the heavenly demonic realm. Fu Kaiwei was shocked. Her bright eyes flashed and she said softly, Chu Li, this is not a joke. Only those who have cultivated the heavenly demonic power can enter the heavenly demonic realm. Those who haven't cultivated the heavenly demonic power can't enter. Could it be that you've cultivated the heavenly demonic power? Chu Li shook his head and laughed. If I've cultivated the heavenly demonic power, how can I not be discovered? You have a treasure with you, Fu Kaiwei said. Chu Li had a treasure to conceal his aura, so she could not guess what Chu Li's current cultivation level was. However, seeing that he could discover great azura that she could not, his cultivation level was probably higher than hers. Chu Li said, this treasure can conceal one's aura, but it can't hide from the heavenly demonic power. I have a heart technique that can imitate the heavenly demonic power and help Senior Lu enter the heavenly demonic realm, but it can only help you enter the heavenly demonic realm. You can't enter the major demonic sects. He would not spread the cloud-slashing power outside the Grandmaster's boundary. Otherwise, if it were to spread, Empyreans could enter the heavenly demonic realm at will. It would directly break the balance between the two realms and even cause an even more intense war. Fu Kaiwei was exceptionally smart. She looked at him deeply. Can you change your appearance like the heavenly demonic power? She thought of Chu Li's appearance when he snatched Guo Bairu's treasure sword. It was completely different from his current appearance. She knew that his disguise technique was extremely brilliant. Could it be a type of demonic power? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. It's not the heavenly demonic power after all. It's just that the aura is somewhat similar to the heavenly demonic power. Forget it, there's no harm in telling you. It's the Sky Killer Sword technique. Fu Kaiwei's bright eyes flashed. Her thoughts were like lightning. She instantly thought of the legend of the Sky Killer Sword. It was said that the Sky Killer Sword technique was passed down by the Sword Demon sect in the heavenly demonic realm. It was coincidentally obtained by the founder of the City of 10,000 Swords. It seemed that the legend was true. Chu Li said, although the Sky Killer Sword technique is not the heavenly demonic power, it can be used to enter the heavenly demonic realm. Have you tried it before? Fu Kaiwei asked. Chu Li nodded. I entered the heavenly demonic realm once. How bold! Fu Kaiwei exclaimed. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. It's just an occasional attempt. It's just a whim. Fu Kaiwei asked, "Can you pass the Sky Killer Sword technique to Masters Junior Lu?" Chu Li replied, "Yes." The most powerful thing about the Sky Killer Sword technique was not the sword technique, but the consumption of one's lifespan. It required a huge amount of lifespan. Otherwise, even if one successfully cultivated it, he would not be able to use it more than a few times in his lifetime unless he also cultivated the ageless longevity technique. Now that he had the 9 swords in one, the Sky Killer Sword technique was far less powerful than the 9 swords in one. It was not a big deal for the Sky Killer Sword to be passed down. Moreover, the City of 10,000 Swords also had the Sky Killer Sword technique. It was impossible for him to possess it alone. More importantly, he saw where the greatest benefits lay. Chapter 2238. If Masters Junior Lu can really enter the heavenly demonic realm and meet that witch, he'll be extremely grateful to you. Fu Kaiwei sighed. He's too affectionate. He's been quiet all these years, but he didn't neglect his cultivation. Instead, he's even more amazing because he's focused on cultivation. Chu Li smiled and told her what happened earlier. Fu Kaiwei came to a realization. No wonder, Masters Junior Lu agreed to help you block Du Kellen. Alright, you have a conscience. Tell Masters Junior Lu this news and let him be happy. Chu Li nodded. Just as the two were about to move, Chu Li suddenly stopped and looked to the south. Fu Kaiwei frowned. Don't tell me great Azuras are here again? Chu Li's face gradually became excited. Looks like we'll have to kill them today. The omniscient mirror had already seen 20 great Azuras rushing towards them. They had clearly sensed their red light. The chances of 20 great Azuras appearing together were extremely low. He guessed that there must be a high honorable lord or some other big shot to make 20 great Azuras move together. Thinking of this, he looked left and right in case there was a big shot lying in ambush at the side, waiting for them to be exhausted before making a move. If an expert like Du Kellen were to secretly make a move, he and Fu Kaiwei would definitely die. Fu Kaiwei smiled. Do you hate Azuras that much? Chu Li said, I hate it. Because of the lower realm? Fu Kaiwei asked. The two talked as they retreated, looking for a reasonable terrain. Chu Li nodded. These people deserve to die. They shouldn't exist in this world. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. The human heart is more sinister. With these Azuras leading the way, the Grandmaster's realm is still considered peaceful. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He knew that this was the plan of the Grandmaster's elders. The existence of Azuras was a good channel to vent their anger. They directed the conflict outwards and kept the internal peace. Without Azuras, the Grandmaster's realm would not be peaceful. If a commotion broke out, the number of deaths would not be less than those in the foreign battlefield. With the Azuras, the ninth heaven and the major sects could still maintain a calm appearance and unite against outsiders. Chu Li smiled. He was not a native of the Outland, so he had never felt a sense of belonging to the Outland. He was more concerned about the lower realm, and the Outland's actions of luring the Azuras into the lower realm had always bothered him, and he could not forgive them. The two of them quickly arrived at a canyon. There was a narrow path that could only allow 2 rows of carriages to walk side by side. The 2 sides of the path were so high that they could reach the clouds. It was straight up and down like 2 sabers cutting into the earth side by side. The canyon was between the 2 sabers. Chu Li and Fu Kaiwei stopped in front of the canyon and nodded. This place was the best terrain to deal with a siege. The 20 great Azuras moved like lightning. As they spoke, they had already appeared in their field of vision. In the blink of an eye, the 20 great Azuras were already right in front of them. Without a word, they charged forward. The 9 swords had already risen into the air and formed a sword wheel above Chu Li's head. Then, he pinched a sword madra with his right hand and pointed his finger. A ball of silver light expanded and shot out. The cultivation of these great Asuras was not low, and they were not inferior to those who had besieged Fu Kaiwei previously. However, under the power of the 9 swords as one, they could not resist at all. Wherever the silver light passed, blood mist filled the air, and the heart of great Asura disappeared in a flash. 7 of the 20 great Asuras were killed in the blink of an eye. The silver light disappeared and the 9 swords returned to his head. They formed a sword wheel like a beast looking down at them from the sky. The 13 great Asuras were terrified. They did not expect Chu Li to be so cruel. He killed 7 of their companions in one go. At the same time, they were shocked by the power of the 9 swords. They felt that they would not be able to avoid or block it. They would definitely die. At their level, they were unwilling to die so easily. Although they would not be destroyed and could start over, they would have to cultivate again. They did not know how long it would take to cultivate to this level and how much suffering they had to go through. Unwilling to give up, they roared and pounced on Chu Li, ignoring Fu Kaiwei. Fu Kaiwei took the opportunity to attack. She killed 2 great Asuras. Chu Li could tell that her cultivation level had also increased. It must have been because she had killed great Asuras. When he thought about strengthening his body, he became energized. He activated the flying demon technique and went up to the 11 great Asuras like a ghost. Then, he shot out his flying star fingers. The meteor finger was extremely fast and strange. One finger would leave a bloody hole and blood would flow. When he activated the meteor finger, the sword technique of the 9 swords circulated and accumulated inner energy. The speed of the 9 swords was extremely fast. In just a short while, he had completed 1 cycle and continued to circulate and accumulate. According to his experience, 30 cycles could almost fill up the 9 Orises. Because his soul was strong and his spirit was strong, the heart technique's speed was fast. 30 cycles sounded like a lot, but it did not take long. When the 11 great Asuras saw that Chu Li and Fu Kaiwei were starting to become dispirited, they became energized and attacked without a care for their own safety. They did not care about their own injuries. As long as they did not die, with their speed of recovery, they would be able to exhaust the 2 of them to death. Chu Li suddenly said, "Senior Sister Fu, go inside." Fu Kaiwei nodded and rushed forward while Chu Li stayed behind. The 11 great Asuras were extremely fast and caught up in the blink of an eye. Fu Kaiwei scoffed and suddenly sped up, activating the secret skill again. Chu Li also activated the sacrificial divine power. With the 2 of them in front and the 11 great Asuras behind, they ran almost 100 miles in a short while. "Turn left and go in," Chu Li shouted. Fu Kaiwei turned left without hesitation and went into a forest. Chu Li followed closely behind. The 11 great Asuras did not care about entering the forest and went straight in. The scene before them suddenly changed. It was as if the forest had suddenly expanded and the trees became thicker and taller. When they looked up, they could not see the sky. Chu Li pulled Fu Kaiwei out of the forest. "This is a formation?" Fu Kaiwei was surprised. Chu Li nodded. As he spoke, he fully activated the sword technique of the 9 sword. Fu Kaiwei also quickly recovered. The 11 great Asuras realized that they were trapped in the formation and tried to break it. Chu Li suddenly went into the forest and shot a great Asura's arm with a flying star finger. The jade pendant in the great Asura's hand fell to the ground. Chu Li moved like a ghost and snatched the jade pendant. He secretly sighed in relief. This jade pendant was a formation-breaking talisman. It must have been snatched from the Devas. Perhaps the Asura realm also had such items. No matter how powerful Chu Li's formation was, it was afraid of this formation-breaking talisman. The sword wheel hovering above his head suddenly turned into a ball of silver light and shot at another great Asura. The formation-breaking talisman in his hand was crushed and disappeared. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, only 2 great Asuras had formation-breaking talismans. Fu Kaiwei stood outside and could not see the situation inside the formation. She shook her head and continued to cultivate with her eyes closed. Bang bang! There were two muffled sounds and Fu Kaiwei suddenly opened her eyes. This familiar sound was made by the great Asuras when they perished together. The forest was shaking and the ground was shaking as well. Then, there was a clear pop and a layer of invisible energy spread out. The trees were broken one after another. Suddenly, there was light in front of them and 8 great Asuras were revealed. They all looked like skeletons and their eyes were glowing red as they stared at Chu Li. Chu Li's face darkened and he dashed to the other side. Chapter 2239. Chu Li was extremely fast, but the 8 skeleton-like great Asuras were even faster. It was as if they were burning their own blood essence, and were as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, they had caught up to Chu Li. Chu Li was surrounded. Fu Kaiwei tensed up and was about to step forward to help him. The 9 swords above Chu Li's head flashed and turned into a ball of silver light that shot towards 2 great Asuras. The 2 great Asuras could not dodge and were hit. They turned into a bloody mist and 2 of the great Asuras' hearts flashed past. The remaining 6 great Asuras roared like ghosts. Even with Fu Kaiwei's strong soul, she could not help but fall into a trance. The scenery in front of her swayed, as if the world had become a dustpan and she had become a pebble in the dustpan. She knew that something was wrong and turned to look. Chu Li's body seemed to have paused for a moment before he suddenly leaped forward. His momentum was stronger than before, as if he was using all his strength to run for his life. Boom! 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 Several earth-shattering noises were heard at the same time. Chu Li's surroundings were shrouded in a bloody mist and nothing could be seen. The 6 great Asuras' hearts flashed and disappeared. The walls of the canyon on both sides sank by 2 feet as if 2 huge melon shells had sunk into the walls. The bloody mist quickly dissipated. Other than Chu Li, who was standing proudly, there was not a single blade of grass around him. Even the ground was clean and there was not a single pebble. A gust of wind blew and Chu Li's white robe fluttered. He stood still and only his white robe fluttered. Fu Kaiwei saw that something was wrong and called out, "Chu Li?" Chu Li did not move and did not answer. Fu Kaiwei could not sense his aura and her heart sank. Could Chu Li have been killed by the 6 great Asuras' self-destruction? The destructive power of the great Asuras' self-destruction was extremely strong and should not be underestimated. With her current cultivation level, even 1 great Asura's self-destruction would be enough to injure her. If there were 2, she would be heavily injured. However, Chu Li had to take on 6 at once. She panicked and wanted to go forward to check on his injuries to save his life. Chu Li suddenly raised his hand and gestured for her to stay away. Fu Kaiwei frowned and stopped. She looked at him from afar in confusion. Hee. Amidst a chuckle, a purple shadow descended from the sky and floated in front of Chu Li. Fu Kaiwei also saw this purple shadow appear. It was a handsome young man with a jade-like face. With sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, he exuded a wild and unruly aura. With a single glance, one could tell that he was a playboy. His heart would not stop for anyone. He treated the world of mortals as child's play. Fu Kaiwei frowned as she looked at the purple-robed youth. Her heart sank. Even from afar, she could sense the power of this purple-robed youth. The aura around him was like a huge wave. Even though she was so far away, she felt like she was standing at the foot of a monstrous wave. It was as if a wave could kill her. Chu Li's current situation was definitely not good, but this purple-robed young man had seized the opportunity to appear. He did not come with good intentions, and this fellow's aura was very similar to that of a great Asura. He was probably an enemy and not a friend. Chu Li reached out and gestured to her behind his back, indicating that she should retreat slowly and not come closer. However, Fu Kaiwei could not escape at this time. Otherwise, Chu Li would definitely die. Although her cultivation level was not as high as this purple-robed young man's, she might be able to delay him for a while if she used her secret skill. The two of them would only have a chance of survival if they worked together. Chuli asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" His voice was hoarse, weak, and weak. "My surname is Liu." The purple-robed young man smiled. "I've underestimated you." No wonder Duke Kellen's face was covered in dirt. "I thought he failed miserably, but that's not the case. He deserved it." Chuli asked, "Liu Feijia?" "That's me." The purple-robed young man smiled. "I didn't expect you to know me." "What an honor!" Chuli scoffed. "How can I not know you, Supreme Lord Liu?" The purple-robed young man, Liu Feijia, shook his head and smiled. "You Celestials are extremely arrogant. It seems like you've never taken us Azura seriously. You don't even bother to understand us. You only know how to treat us as beasts and kill us." Chuli sneered. "If that's the case, you're blaming us Celestials?" Liu Feijia nodded. "If the Celestials weren't so arrogant, we wouldn't have ended up in this situation. We have to fight to the death." Chuli chuckled and shook his head. "Don't you think it's too hypocritical, Supreme Lord? If Azuras want to improve their Azura power technique, they need ferocious energy and blood. If we don't kill others, do we kill Azuras? That doesn't necessarily have to be the Grandmaster realm," Liu Feijia said. "After all, it's the Grandmaster realm that provoked us first. That's why things have gotten to this point. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this." Chuli said, "If we don't attack first, you'll definitely come to us. When that happens, we'll die even more miserably. Supreme Lord Liu, you know that, right?" "Haha, you're quite eloquent." Liu Feijia shook his head. "If that's the case, then let's see who's the real deal." Chuli laughed. "Supreme Lord Liu, you're taking advantage of us when we're down? I want to avenge my subordinates. How is this taking advantage?" Liu Feijia chuckled. "Chuli, you don't have to waste your efforts. You won't be able to recover in such a short period of time. Did you think that by chatting with me for a while, you'll be able to recover your cultivation level and have a chance to live? Haha, it just so happens that when you think you have a chance, I won't give you the chance." He laughed proudly. He saw through Chuli's intentions at first glance but pretended not to know. Then, when Chuli's injuries were just a little better, he attacked again, causing Chuli to feel despair. This feeling of personally crushing someone's hope was the most comfortable. Chuli squinted his eyes and a cold light flashed through them. This Liu Feijia's thoughts were strange. He was tyrannical and cruel. He looked talented and elegant, but in reality, he was a twisted person. Not only did he kill people, but he also liked to torture people. In a flash, Liu Feijia appeared in front of Chuli and lightly hit him with his palm. Chuli felt a huge force pulling him forward, and he could not control his body. He quickly used the 1,000 pounds falling to stabilize himself, but he was not in a hurry to use the 9 swords as one. He knew that it was useless now. This Liu Feijia's cultivation level was no weaker than Duke Kellen's. Without a perfect 9 swords as one, he could not hurt him at all. Liu Feijia's palm pressed down again. Chuli instantly felt like a mountain was pressing down on him. He was already using the 1,000 pounds falling, but now that he was being pressed down by this force, it was too late for him to stop the 1,000 pounds falling. He fell straight to the ground. Seeing that he was about to fall to the ground, Chuli activated the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture in time to turn Yin into Yang. He suddenly stood up straight and pointed his finger. TSS. The flying star finger was aimed at Liu Feijia's chest. Liu Feijia lightly shook his palm, and instantly, his palm energy collided with the finger energy. Bang! The flying star finger energy and his palm energy produced a dull sound that sounded like a beating drum. Then, an invisible force spread out, and Chuli leaped to avoid the impact. The impact of the finger energy and palm energy was shocking. His current weak body could not withstand it. Chapter 2240. Great Finger Force. Lu Feijia was merciless and pressed his palm toward Chu Li again. His palm energy had reached the acme of perfection. He could absorb or repel, be it heavy or light, be it up or down, all of them were at his will. It was as if the palm energy that had been shot out was still in his body, which made Chu Li exclaim in admiration. However, despite his admiration, his killing intent was boiling. He had been looking for an opportunity to use the meteor finger to tangle with him while desperately activating the Nine Swords sword technique to accumulate the power of the technique. The more he used the Nine Swords sword technique, the faster he became and the less time he needed to circulate it. He estimated that he would need another hour to fully accumulate it before he could deal a fatal blow. However, he was not confident at all. Lu Feijia was unusually cunning and his light body technique was superb. It was difficult for him to escape to Lu Jianfei, who was 100 miles away. However, Sun Mingyue should have received his message for help and was on her way here. She would arrive soon. Therefore, he pretended to activate the Nine Swords sword technique as if he was secretly preparing a fatal blow. Based on Lu Feijia's character, he would definitely give him time to prepare and then use the fatal blow when he was about to succeed. That way, he would feel even more refreshed. He used this to attract his attention and get Lu Jianfei to come as soon as possible. Fu Kaiwei stood in the distance and did not move closer. She seemed to be hesitating, but she was actually trying to distract Lu Feijia and reduce the pressure on Chu Li. Chu Li secretly praised her for her intelligence. However, for a powerful person like Lu Feijia, this trick was not very useful because Fu Kaiwei and Chu Li could not escape from him even if they worked together. Sun Mingyue was fighting with a great Azura. This great Azura had a high cultivation level, and she had to be careful. Most importantly, she could not let him commit suicide. Therefore, she had to kill him in one blow before he felt that he was no match for her. Sun Mingyue's control of her cultivation level had been perfected. It looked like she only had half of her true cultivation level and was in an awkward situation. She was neither a top-notch master nor a first-rate master. She was in between first-rate and top-notch. The Great Azura's cultivation level was not as high as hers but seemed to be stronger. He was also attacking wildly and wanted to kill her in one blow. Sun Mingyue glanced at the forest in the distance. Lu Jianfei and Huang Yu were hiding there. They were already disdainful of casually making a move. Once they came out, they would immediately chase this great Azura away. The Great Light Scripture was the nemesis of Azuras, and killing Great Azuras was the best way to improve the Great Light Scripture. Therefore, she needed to kill Great Azuras, and Lu Jianfei and Huang Yu fulfilled her wish by avoiding her from afar. Suddenly, she sensed something and her expression changed. Suddenly, her aura changed and her body shone brightly. In an instant, she struck the chest of the Great Azura. The Great Azura was caught off guard. After being hit by the palm, a ball of light suddenly appeared around his body. Then, the light burned around his body like a flame. His expression changed greatly, and he was no longer able to use the indiscriminate destruction technique. He could only watch as his blood essence burned to nothing before turning into a heart of Azura and disappearing. Sun Mingyue suddenly appeared in the forest and closed fist saluted. Masters Junior Lu, Brother Huang, Chu Li is in danger. N. Lu Jianfei hurriedly said, Then let's go. Huang Yu said, Junior sister Sun, how do you know? Sun Mingyue said, I have a connection with him. We can sense each other's force. His force is weak now and he's injured. There aren't many great Azuras who can hurt him. It's very likely that Du Kellan has appeared. Lead the way, Lu Jianfei said. Sun Mingyue turned into a bright light and shot into the distance. Lu Jianfei and Huang Yu followed closely behind. Huang Yu said as they walked, It can't be a trap, right? Masters Junior, we haven't seen Masters Senior Jing and Masters Senior Lu yet. It's too late. Lu Jianfei shook his head. But it's too dangerous to go just like that. Huang Yu frowned. What if Du Kellen deliberately used Chu Li as bait to lure us over? That can't be helped. We can't just watch Chu Li die, right? Lu Jianfei said. He glanced at Huang Yu and said in a deep voice, You wait here. When Senior Brother Jing and Senior Brother Lu arrive, tell them to come find me. Huang Yu shook his head. Masters Junior, I'll go with you. Lu Jianfei said, Chu Li will definitely encounter someone powerful. It might not be Du Kellen, but it's definitely someone on the same level as him. You won't be of much help even if you go. Instead, you'll be a burden. Huang Yu blushed. Lu Jianfei said, Although Ming Yu is also a burden, she can lead the way. You have to wait here for Brother Jing and Brother Lu to bring them over. It'll be best if they can arrive in time. Yes. Huang Yu nodded slowly. He was not worried about his own safety, but Lu Jianfei. Lu Jianfei patted his shoulder. If they can't sense me when they arrive, then there's no need to come looking for me. Masters Junior, Huang Yu quickly called out. Lu Jianfei smiled and said to Sun Mingyue, Let's go. Sun Mingyue said, Masters Junior Lu, Brother Huang, Chu Li's opponent is Lu Feijie. The Western Reverend Lord Lu Feijie. Lu Jianfei shook his head. He's someone more difficult to deal with than Du Kellen. He then smiled and said, But you can rest assured that Lu Feijie won't join forces with the other Reverend Lords. We still have a chance. Junior sister Sun, how do you know it's Lu Feijie? Huang Yu frowned. He was not suspicious, he was just curious as to how she could know Chu Li's thoughts from such a long distance. This strange skill was quite amazing. Could it be the legendary 1,000 miles voice transmission? Sun Mingyue smiled and did not say much. All right, since it's Lu Feijie, then you have to wait for Brother Jing and Brother Lu. Let's go. Lu Jianfei said in a low voice. The three of them kept running as they spoke. Huang Yu cupped his fists and stopped in his tracks. He watched as Lu Jianfei sped away under Sun Mingyue's lead and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Huang Yu floated back to the forest where he had stayed earlier and looked into the distance anxiously. They had already sent out a signal to call for Masters Junior Lu and Masters Junior Lu. Unfortunately, they could not teleport to the foreign battlefields, so they could not rush over immediately. If they could not make it in time, Masters Junior Lu would be in danger. Lu Feijie was one of the 4 honorable lords and was even more powerful than Du Kellen. Masters Junior Lu might not be his match. He was anxious but helpless. He wished he could grow a pair of wings and bring the 2 Masters Junior Lu to help. Chu Li channeled and used Flying Star Finger to compete with Lu Feijie's palm energy, appreciating the superb Azura's divine palm. Lu Feijie laughed. You called for help, right? Chu Li replied, Yes. Lu Feijie squinted his eyes and laughed. He shook his head. What a cunning little fella. He felt that Chu Li did not call for help but used it to distract him so that he could quietly accumulate energy and give him a fatal blow. This little fellow was very cunning, it was better to get rid of him. He had a murderous intent in his heart and his actions became more and more natural. What finger energy did you use? Chu Li replied, Ring finger. Looks like it's a martial art that you obtained through a fortuitous encounter, Lu Feijie said. Looks like you had many fortuitous encounters. Chu Li replied, Yes. Lu Feijie's expression changed slightly. He turned to look at Chu Li's back. He felt a master approaching quickly. Chapter 2241. Chu Li frowned. It was impossible to stop him with his body technique. Almost instinctively, the 9 swords turned into a ball of silver light and shot out. The speed of the sword wheel was like lightning, shooting behind him in an instant. Bang! A muffled explosion sounded. Lu Feijia was unscathed, but the 9 swords were scattered and shot towards Chu Li. They floated in the air, and formed a sword wheel again, like a giant beast occupying the void, staring at him. He felt it was a pity. This time, he only had half of the power of his strongest attack. He had not filled his sea of energy yet, so he was forced to use this attack. The power was indeed extraordinary, much stronger than before. He was already standing beside Fu Kaiwei, the sword of indifference above his head shot out a few swords. TSS, 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 TSS. The invisible swords pierced towards Lu Feijia. A faintly discernible red light shrouded him. He looked at Chu Li and slowly nodded. This must be your killer move. 9 swords in one, the city of 10,000 swords. Chu Li nodded. 9 swords in one. Great cultivation level, Supreme Master Lu. You can't kill me with this little ability. Lu Feijia scoffed. He looked at Lu Jianfei, who was approaching, and squinted. It's you, Lu Jianfei. Lu Feijia. Lu Jianfei rushed towards him. Sun Mingyue came to Chu Li's side and looked at him. Are you okay? Chu Li smiled. I won't die yet. Thank goodness you made it in time. Sun Mingyue frowned. Masters Junior Lu took the risk to come here. It's a shame that Masters Junior Jing and Masters Junior Lu didn't come. They might not be able to defeat Lu Feijia, right? Chu Li shook his head. Let's wait and see. I'm going to channel. Sun Mingyue nodded and looked at Fu Kaiwei. Senior Sister Fu, are you okay? Fu Kaiwei pursed her lips and smiled. You still remember me. She watched helplessly as Sun Mingyue only had eyes for Chu Li. Sun Mingyue's eyes were fixated on Chu Li and she had completely ignored her. This was a woman who had fallen in love. Sun Mingyue smiled. Senior Sister Fu is so reassuring. Fu Kaiwei said, I also owe Chu Li for saving my life. Be careful. Lu Feijia is very despicable. He might ambush us. Understood. Sun Mingyue nodded. The 2 women stood in front of Chu Li so that he could focus on channeling. Chu Li gave it his all to activate the 9 swords sword technique, striving to fill the sea of energy as soon as possible to form the strongest attack. Although it would not kill Lu Feijia, it would at least be able to threaten him. Otherwise, they would only be a burden. He had witnessed Lu Jianfei's strength. Just like Lu Feijia, he struck out lightly with his palm. The 2 of them seemed to be playing a game. Their right palms struck out lightly, as though they weren't affected by the force at all. But between the 2 of them, muffled sounds rang out incessantly, like rolling thunder in spring, shaking one's soul. The ground between the 2 of them had already become bare, and the surrounding trees had long been swept away, leaving only an empty flat ground for the 2 of them to leisurely gesture, causing the 2 women to be shocked. Their skills were profound and could be considered as top-notch masters. They had seen masters like Lu Feijia and Lu Jianfei before, but it was extremely rare for them to fight in such a strange way. It was as though they were both controlling their own strength to prevent it from spilling out. They were also exploring each other's weaknesses, striving to kill in one hit. Chu Li's omniscient mirror could see the 2's invisible palm energy clashing. It seemed to be a light gesture, but in fact, the 2's palm energy was changing into various shapes. One moment it was a blade, the next moment it was a sword, the next moment it was a shield, and the next moment it was a spear. Both of them were restraining each other. Lu Feijia's palm energy shot out like an arrow, while Lu Jianfei's inner energy turned into a round shield to block it. Lu Feijia's palm energy turned into an arrow, trying to avoid the round shield formed by the palm energy, but the round shield suddenly moved and blocked the arrow again. Lu Feijia then turned the arrow into a sword and stabbed at the round shield, while Lu Jianfei turned the round shield into a blade and slashed at the sword. The 2's palm energy clashed, and both of them were extremely refined. Chu Li could not help but admire Lu Jianfei's profound skills, but Lu Jianfei was indeed at a disadvantage. He was not as good as Lu Feijia, and it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. He desperately urged the nine swords sword technique, and wanted nothing more than to fill up his 9C of aura. Unfortunately, time waited for no man. 20 great Asuras flew over from afar, and their cultivation levels were similar to the 20 great Asuras from before. Eliminate them, Lu Feijia said calmly, then pouted at Chu Li and the others. The 20 great Asuras replied, "Yes, honorable lord." They pounced at Chu Li and the others at the same time. Chu Li did not move, and continued to focus on the nine swords sword technique. Although he could multitask, the speed at which he channeled the nine swords sword technique was much faster, and it shortened the time needed to fill up his 9C of aura. Sun Mingyue's figure blurred, and she turned into a bright light that shot toward one of the great Asuras. The great Asura met her with his palm, and as soon as he came into contact with Sun Mingyue, his body began to glow. Before his protective red light could light up, a white flame had already appeared, and it burned brighter and brighter. The great Asura's face revealed a pained expression, and he quickly turned into flames. In the end, a bloody mist filled the air, and the heart of Asura flashed before it completely disappeared. Fu Kaiwei tossed out a jade pendant, and a green light instantly protected Chu Li. She then let out a soft shout, and a delicate shout came out of her mouth. "Freeze!" As soon as she shouted, the 19 great Asura's bodies suddenly stopped moving. In that instant, 3 of the great Asuras were wrapped up by Sun Mingyue's scripture flame of great light. Their bodies emitted a white light that turned into raging flames, and then they burned like human-shaped candles. After a while, they turned into a bloody mist and disappeared. Fu Kaiwei softly shouted again, "Freeze!" The remaining 16 great Asuras stopped moving again, and Sun Mingyue's figure had already become blurred, and she pushed her speed to the limit. The two of them cooperated very well. After all, they were sisters from the same sect, and they knew each other's background. Another 4 great Asuras were burned by the scripture flame of great light, and they quickly disappeared. Fu Kaiwei shouted again, "Freeze!" Her face was as pale as a sheet, and the redness that she had regained earlier had faded again. Sun Mingyue's body turned into a white light, and she instantly hit 5 great Asuras, and they turned into flames again. Fu Kaiwei was on the verge of collapsing, and she no longer had the strength to use the soul-petrifying secret skill. Sun Mingyue's face was also pale, and her eyes were dim. Bang 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 bang! Just as the remaining 7 great Asuras were about to surround and kill the 2 women, they suddenly flew out and turned into bloody mist in the air, and were destroyed in the blink of an eye. The 7 great Asuras were taken advantage of by Chu Li, and the god-punishing thunder sword shot out, and they were completely destroyed. Chu Li opened his eyes, and blue light flickered in them. He sighed and said, "Hurry up and leave." He had already sensed Lu Feijia's eerie killing intent, and it was directed at the 2 women. He did not expect the 2 women to be so powerful when they worked together. Unfortunately, his 9 sword energies did not fill up his 9 energy Cs, and it was not powerful enough to kill Lu Feijia. Even if he attacked, it would not help, and he had to bear with it, so he had to let the 2 women leave quickly. "What will you do if we leave?" Sun Mingyue frowned. Chu Li shook his head. "I have my own plans. Let's go." He took a step and stood between Sun Mingyue and Fu Kaiwei, then grabbed the 2 women and shot out. Bang! A palm print appeared where the 2 women were, and it was clearly imprinted on the ground. It was a foot deep, and it looked as if a huge rock had fallen from the sky. Chapter 2242. Chu Li could no longer care about the circulation of the 9 swords sword technique. His mind was racing as he activated the omniscient mirror, heavenly star insight technique, heaven's eye, and nature restoration manifestation at the same time to predict the position of Lu Feijia's next palm strike. By the time Lu Feijia attacked with his palm, it was already too late. His palm was too fast, faster than his reaction speed. Chu Li hugged the two women and dodged the attack by a hair's breadth, while Lu Jianfei desperately tried to stop him. At this moment, he realized that his cultivation level was far inferior to Lu Feijie's, and he actually could not stop Lu Feijie's left palm attack. Lu Feijie was multitasking. He had the upper hand in dealing with Chu Li with his right palm, while his left palm chased after Chu Li. Moreover, Chu Li's speed of escape was far slower than his speed of pursuit. The closer he got, the harder it was to avoid his left palm. Lu Jianfei panicked. He knew that if he did not think of a way to stop Lu Feijie, Chu Li and the other two would be in danger. Lu Feijie could take their lives with just one palm. These three were the top figures of the younger generation, the pillars of the future. If they were to die in the hands of Lu Feijie, it would be a great loss. As a martial uncle, he would be too ashamed to face others. Thinking of this, he made up his mind. Suddenly, with a clear whistle, his body emitted a hazy green light, like the warm luster of jade. His entire body seemed to have become a jade sculpture. "Martial Uncle Lu, you can't!" Fu Kaiwei shouted. Lu Jianfei smiled and shook his head. "Kaiwei, work hard and avenge me in the future." He was burning his lifespan. After a while, all of his lifespan would be burned away, and he would obtain extraordinary power. Even if he couldn't kill Lu Feijie, he would be able to heavily injure him. Lu Feijie frowned at him and snorted. Fine. He had already gotten close to Chu Li and was aiming his palm at his chest. All of a sudden, Chu Li let go of the two women's left palm that was heading toward him. He reached out with his right hand, and the sky-regal sword that was hovering above his head appeared in his hand. Lu Feijie's palm was so fast that it had already struck Chu Li's chest. At the same time, a clear light streaked toward his throat. A powerful force suddenly appeared and bound him. However, he sneered and broke through this powerful force with a light shake. He raised his right palm in front of his throat. As he straightened his palm, he retreated at the same time. He felt that the power of this sword was not to be underestimated. He couldn't take it head-on. Chi! His right palm fell to the ground without a sound. His wrist was white, but there was no blood. The heaven-killing sword slashed across his right palm, but it did not manage to slash his neck. He had already retreated to avoid the sword. He looked at his right palm helplessly and saw that Chu Li's hair had suddenly turned white. His eyebrows had also turned snow-white, and his face was covered in wrinkles. He had suddenly turned from a young man into an old man. "Good, good." Lu Feijie sneered and said, "You're really ruthless enough." He could tell at a glance that Chu Li was also using the lifespan burning technique. That one slash had used up all of his lifespan. He was already at the end of his life, and did not have much time left to live. It was the same for the other guy. Bam! Lu Jianfei silently appeared behind him, and struck out with his palm. Lu Feijie originally wanted to use his right palm to block the attack, but he suddenly realized that his right palm was no longer there. In that moment of sluggishness, Lu Jianfei's left palm had already struck his chest. Lu Feijie flew straight out and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Lu Jianfei had used a secret technique to burn his lifespan, and his shockingly powerful palm strike had finally heavily injured him. Lu Feijie's face darkened. He channeled his force and was about to counterattack, but a ball of silver light suddenly appeared. He could only use his palm to block the attack. Bam! Lu Feijie sped up again. His clothes were torn and his body was a bloody mess. Chu Li shouted, "Ming-Yu!" Sun Ming-Yu stepped forward and held his big hand. Their forces blended together, and the supreme scripture of Vajra circulated mightily. Chu Li activated the sacrificial divine power and struck out with his right palm. Suddenly, rays of golden light shot down from the sky and turned into golden palms that slammed towards Lu Feijie. It was as if the endless golden palms had turned into a storm and attacked him. These golden palms looked like they were made of real gold. They were clear and real. When they landed on his body, loud bam-bam sounds could be heard. Lu Feijie's protective red light had already been broken by the 9 swords in one. At this moment, his body was being attacked by the golden palms, and his injuries were worsening. Bam! Lu Jianfei struck out with his palm again. Lu Feijie met it with his left palm. Bam! His body that was flying backwards suddenly stopped as if he was being pulled by Lu Jianfei. Lu Jianfei's expression changed and he wanted to retreat. A proud smile appeared on Lu Feijie's handsome face. Lu Jianfei only felt that the inner energy in his body was surging out like a broken dam, rushing towards Lu Feijie. Lu Feijie was actually using a strange technique that absorbed and devoured his cultivation level. Lu Jianfei's heart was cold. He felt that something was wrong. If this continued, his cultivation level would become Lu Feijie's cultivation level and quickly recover from his injuries. Then, he would kill Lu Jianfei, Chu Li, and the others. He struck out with his palm towards Lu Feijie's forehead again. However, a crisp pop sound was heard. His palm was firmly stuck on Lu Feijie's forehead and could not be pulled out. Both of his palms were being sucked in. He turned his head and looked in the direction he came from. It seemed that he could not meet senior brother Jing and senior brother Lu for the last time. Thinking of this, he began to work hard to reverse the flow of blood and slowed down the speed of the inner energy flowing into his body. He tried to delay as much time as possible, hoping that a miracle would happen and senior brother Jing and senior brother Lu would arrive in time. Chu Li leaned forward and struck Lu Feijie's back with his palm. His palm was like it was made of gold. This was his strongest palm, and it was enough to injure Lu Feijie. The turbulent suction from Lu Feijie's body sucked in his right palm and took the opportunity to devour his cultivation level. Chu Li sneered and pressed his other palm on Lu Jianfei. Instantly, his inner energy also poured into Lu Jianfei's body. Both of their inner energies surged towards Lu Feijie. Chu Li shook his head. This was the situation he was least afraid of. It might be a miracle to others, but to him who cultivated the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, it was the most familiar and easiest to deal with. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was activated. The yin-yang wheels on the shoulders of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Buddha in the void of his mind suddenly flashed. His body produced 2 auras of extreme yin and yang. One of his palms was extreme yin, while the other was extreme yang. 2 completely different inner energies entered Lu Feijie's body. These 2 different inner energies were refined and pure. They were not only inner energies but also soul energy. After entering Lu Feijie's body, they were not devoured and melted by Lu Feijie. Suddenly, they began to repel each other. Lu Feijie's expression changed and the inner energy in his body became chaotic. Chu Li's right hand suddenly left his body and reached towards the sky. Once again, the imperial sky sword fell and gently swung. Lu Feijie wanted to speak but could not. His head was already separated from his body and rolled to the ground. Bang! Blood mist condensed. Chu Li and Lu Jianfei were sent flying and spat out blood in the air. Sun Mingyue went forward to catch Chu Li while Fu Kaiwei caught Lu Jianfei. They landed gently on the ground and the blood mist had already dissipated. Chu Li saw a thick red line floating into his body. After merging with his blood, it went straight to his heart. Then, his body suddenly tensed up as if it had become much heavier. Then, it became much lighter as if he was flying. He felt the strength of his body. Originally, he could use the 9 swords as 7 times. Now, he should be able to use it 9 times. This time, he had gained a lot. The faint green light around Lu Jianfei had already dissipated. He pushed Fu Kaiwei's hand away and looked at Chu Li. How is it? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Senior Lu, don't worry. I won't die. You killed the Honorable Lord. We're in big trouble now, Lu Jianfei said solemnly. Looking at Chu Li's aged appearance, he shook his head and sighed. Burning my life force, the imperial sky soared. Chapter 2243. Chu Li smiled nonchalantly. Senior Lu, how can you not pay a price for killing a revered lord? Didn't you burn your lifespan too? It doesn't matter to me anymore. Lu Jianfei shook his head. He felt that there was no difference between living and dying. It was just a matter of living day by day, peacefully and bored towards death. It did not matter if he suddenly burned his lifespan and died suddenly. Instead, he felt that it was more satisfying. He just did not want to end his own life, but it was better to have a chance to perish together with a revered lord and save a rising star. Chu Li asked, Senior Lu, don't you want to go to the heavenly demonic realm? Lu Jianfei was stunned. Fu Kaiwei pursed her lips and smiled. Chu Li said that he can use sky-murdering sword technique to imitate the heavenly demonic power and sneak into the heavenly demonic realm. He has tried it and there's no problem. Masters Junior, you can try it too. Really? Lu Jianfei stepped forward and grabbed Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. How would I dare to joke with you about this? He did not care what Lu Jianfei was thinking. The two of them fought side by side, gave their all, and risked their lives to kill Lu Feijie. He benefited the most, so of course, he had to repay him. Lu Jianfei stared at Chu Li. His lips trembled slightly, and his eyes shone brightly. He was no longer as dispirited as before. Can I really enter the heavenly demonic realm? Chu Li smiled and nodded. Senior, don't worry. We'll go after we recover. What do you think? All right. Lu Jianfei was ecstatic. His eyes lit up as he said eagerly, Kaiwei, quick, bring me the spirit medicine. He looked at Chu Li's white hair and wrinkled face. He shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that we didn't bring any spirit medicine to prolong one's lifespan. We'll return to Crouching Dragon City now, and go to the peak to get the spirit medicine. Chu Li smiled. Senior, don't worry. I'm fine. Sigh. You. Lu Jianfei shook his head. He felt that Chu Li was too reckless. From the looks of it, he did not have many years left to live. The price to pay for dying so early at such a young age was too high. However, if they didn't go all out just now, they would have died directly. Not only would they have died, but the two women wouldn't have been spared either. They had no other choice but to sigh helplessly. He glanced at Sun Mingyue and nodded to himself when he saw that Sun Mingyue did not look sad. This Sun Mingyue was indeed the bishop of the Holy Church of Light. She had a deep mind and did not show her emotions. She was even more outstanding than most men. Fu Kaiwei took out a bottle of spirit medicine and threw it to Chu Li. Sun Mingyue took it and poured out the entire bottle of spirit medicine before stuffing it into Chu Li's mouth. Her jade-like hands forcefully stuffed it into his mouth, her face expressionless. Chu Li looked at her and swallowed it helplessly. Fu Kaiwei asked, Chu Li, are you really all right? I won't die. Chu Li smiled. Fu Kaiwei shook her head lightly and did not say anything else. She had the same guess as Lu Jianfei, and did not dare to look at Sun Mingyue in case she showed sympathy. They loved each other but could not stay together. Judging from Chu Li's appearance, he would not live for long. One could imagine Sun Mingyue's pain. Chu Li said, I've always been lucky. Even if I lose my lifespan, I can slowly recover it. It's just that after killing a revered lord, it's best for us to escape back to Sleeping Dragon City. Sigh. Lu Jianfei shook his head and smiled bitterly. Chu Li, you're in big trouble this time. A revered lord has been killed. This is a great humiliation to Azura. When the ruler of God appears, the first thing he'll do is to kill you. Chu Li nodded. He also knew the consequences of killing a reverend lord. He would become the public enemy of the entire Azura realm. All of the Azuras would want to kill him, and they wouldn't stop until he was dead. No matter how strong he was, there would be Azuras coming to kill him. They would do everything they could to take him down with them. They might even assassinate his women and friends to make him pay the price. This would serve as a deterrent and let everyone know the dignity of an Azura revered lord. Do you have any way to deal with this? Lu Jianfei asked. Chu Li smiled. Kill the other 3 revered lords. Hee. Lu Jianfei shook his head and laughed. How ambitious! This was impossible. Although Chu Li's cultivation level was high, it was far from the level where he could kill a revered lord. If he did not team up with Lu Jianfei, he would definitely die alone. Even if he burned his lifespan and used a secret skill, it would still be useless. Chu Li said, Senior, I don't have any other choice now. I can only kill until the end and make the Azura afraid. The Azura are immortal. They won't be afraid, Lu Jianfei said. Instead, we're the ones who are afraid. It's best for you to hide. Then I can only hide in the heavenly demonic realm, Chu Li said. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for the heavenly demonic realm to be on good terms with the Azura. Lu Jianfei frowned. Chu Li shook his head. I've stayed in the heavenly demonic realm for a while. From what I know, the heavenly demonic realm and the Azura aren't on good terms. Instead, they're already having an affair. It's very likely that they're going to fall out. Oh? Lu Jianfei looked at him in surprise. Chu Li told him about what he saw in the heavenly demonic realm. When he heard that the great Azura assassinated the heavenly demonic realm, Lu Jianfei frowned and pondered. Chu Li felt that Lu Jianfei was a kindred spirit. Since he had taken a liking to the witch, his hostility towards the heavenly demonic realm was naturally shallow. He could listen to Chu Li's words, but if he told it to other heavenly men, they would not care at all. Lu Jianfei pondered. Chu Li said, Let's return to the town first. In their current state, if they ran into Du Kellen again, they would really die. Masters Junior Lu. A shout came from afar. 3 figures came like a gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, they were close. It was Huang Yu and 2 middle-aged men. These 2 middle-aged men had square faces. Their looks were ordinary and their gazes were gentle. They looked the most mediocre, and it was difficult to tell that they were martial arts masters. However, their speed was indeed shocking. Their cultivation level was only slightly lower than Lu Jianfei's. Senior Brother Jing, Senior Brother Lu. Lu Jianfei smiled. The 2 of them stepped forward. When they saw his appearance, they asked in a deep voice, Have you fought? I've killed the Western Reverend Lord, Lu Feijie. Lu Jianfei sighed. Sun Mingyue and Fu Kaiwei went forward to greet the 2 middle-aged men. Fu Kaiwei told them what happened and the 2 looked at Chu Li. Huang Yu also recognized Chu Li. Although his hair was white and his face was full of wrinkles, the clothes he wore and the way Sun Mingyue was standing next to him intimately proved his identity. This is really troublesome, the 2 said. Although killing Lu Feijie was admirable, the trouble that followed was even worse. The Azura realm would not allow the 2 to live. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. The group walked towards Sleeping Dragon City. The journey was smooth and no one disturbed them. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, Chu Li noticed that his body was flashing with a dazzling red light. The red light shot up 10 feet into the sky. However, this red light could not be seen by ordinary people. Azuras could see it clearly and sense it from afar. After returning to Sleeping Dragon City, they immediately teleported back to Taihao Peak. Then, Chu Li went into isolated cultivation. Sun Mingyue knew what he needed and found some spirit herbs for him to absorb his life force. 3 days later, when Chu Li came out of isolated cultivation, he had returned to his original appearance. His hair was black and his face was as gentle as jade. As soon as he came out, he saw Lu Jianfei standing outside the courtyard. Chapter 2244. Senior Lu, have you not fully recovered from your injuries? Chu Li asked with a frown. Logically speaking, Great Dawn Peak had a lot of elixirs and medicines, and Lu Jianfei's cultivation was high. Coupled with elixirs, no matter how serious his injuries were, he should have already recovered by now. He should not be as weak as he was now. His face was ashen and his eyes were bloodshot. If he ran into Lu Feijie again in such a situation, he would definitely die. It was obvious that he hadn't recovered from the aftermath of using the secret technique. He hadn't practiced much in the past 3 days. He was really too irresponsible. He had already abandoned his body. He could have become a monk and treated his body like a stinky bag. Lu Jianfei shook his head with a smile and said, "It doesn't matter. Let's go quickly." Chu Li frowned. "With Senior Lu's current cultivation level, it's still very difficult for you to cultivate Heaven Regicide Sword. Is the Heaven Killing Sword that hard to cultivate?" Lu Jianfei frowned. Chu Li said, "The cultivation of Heaven Killing Sword requires comprehension and a state of mind. Masters Junior Lu, your current state of mind is not compatible with Heaven Killing Sword. No matter how good your aptitude is, you won't be able to cultivate Heaven Killing Sword technique." "Let's practice while we're on our way," Lu Jianfei said. He couldn't wait to see his sweetheart. Originally, he thought that he would never have the chance to see her again in this life, and could only see her in his dreams every night. However, the face of his sweetheart was as clear as day. He didn't know how she was doing now, whether she had an accident, or whether she was still waiting for him. Dozens of years had passed, and he had met her countless times in his dreams. This time, he was finally going to meet her in person. Every time he thought about it, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. He couldn't calm his heart and cultivate, nor did he care about his body's injuries, allowing the spiritual medicine to heal on its own. 3 days in such a situation was naturally not enough for him to recover. Chu Li shook his head and said, "You can't cultivate the heaven-murdering sword technique while you're on the road. You need absolute silence and can't be disturbed. You still have to cultivate at Taihao Peak. Senior Lu, you've forgotten yourself." Once his mental state was lost, no matter how good Lu Jianfei's perception was, it would be very difficult for him to comprehend the true meaning of the heaven-killing sword art. On the other hand, the heaven-murder sword technique required the state of mind to be in harmony. Without the state of mind, it was useless to just comprehend it. There was no power to speak of. Moreover, it did not have the God's will of the heaven-murder sword. It was very difficult for it to be similar to the heavenly demonic power. Lu Jianfei's expression turned solemn, and he said in a solemn voice, "All right, I will calm my heart down." Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. "Follow me," Lu Jianfei said. He turned around and walked out with Chu Li following closely behind. The two of them left the guest house and went up to a stone cave. The cave was about the height of 2 people and the width of 2 people. Standing inside did not feel stuffy at all. Instead, it felt refreshing and spacious. The air inside the cave was fresh. It was obvious that someone had set up ventilation holes that no one could see. The two of them came to the depths of the cave. It was a living room with a stone table and a stone table. On the table, there was a teapot and 2 teacups. Other than that, there was nothing else. It was empty and cold. "This is my residence," Lu Jianfei said. Chu Li nodded lightly and did not show any surprise. "Are you cultivating the heaven-murdering sword technique here?" "How is it?" Lu Jianfei asked. Chu Li said, "Once the sword energy is condensed, I'm afraid this place will be destroyed." "It's fine," Lu Jianfei said. Chu Li said, "Let's do it here then." He could see that Lu Jianfei had nothing in his heart and did not care about anything. He was indeed living like a walking corpse. This was the best state for martial arts practitioners, which was why he had his current cultivation level. He sat on a stone stool next to him and said slowly, "Senior Lu, my technique is different from ordinary people. I need you to be unguarded." Lu Jianfei smiled. "Why would I be wary of you?" Senior Lu, please sit on the couch. I'll explain the sword technique, Chu Li said. Lu Jianfei sat on the stone couch without hesitation. He sat cross-legged and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li closed his eyes slightly and formed a seal with his hands. He was like an old monk in meditation, motionless. Lu Jianfei looked at him curiously. His heart calmed down and did not let himself get excited. While his heart was calm, Chu Li murmured. Lu Jianfei listened carefully and unknowingly closed his eyes. His eyes began to shine brightly. He had unknowingly arrived at the peak of a mountain. He stood next to a pine tree. The breeze gently caressed his face. It was indescribably comfortable. Chu Li was already standing under the pine tree. He smiled at him and began to swing his sword. Chu Li's movements were slow and calm. As he moved slowly, his body became transparent. A red line appeared from his dantian and flowed in his meridians along with the sword's momentum. When the sword's momentum was withdrawn, the red line had already circled around and returned to his dantian. Lu Jianfei saw it clearly and remembered it immediately. Chu Li gestured for him to practice. Lu Jianfei took the sword and slowly swung it. He actually mastered it in one go. He felt the flow of inner energy in his body. When the sword's momentum recovered, there was already a strange force in his dantian. He knew that this was the sword aura of heaven murder sword technique. He did not expect it to be so easy. Chu Li continued to practice and began to practice the next style. Lu Jianfei followed closely behind and learned it. After memorizing it, he practiced it again and remembered it clearly. Chu Li practiced 9 styles. He also learned 9 styles. In the end, his eyes were filled with light. His vision gradually became blurry. He woke up in a daze and looked at Chu Li opposite him. Chu Li also opened his eyes. There seemed to be a faint light between his eyebrows. He was using the scripture impartation method. It consumed a huge amount of spiritual energy to let Lu Jianfei comprehend heaven murder sword technique in the shortest time possible. Lu Jianfei looked surprised. A strange feeling appeared in his heart. It seemed to be a murderous intent, but also a sense of unwillingness. It was as if he wanted to go against heaven and achieve his goal at all cost. This strange feeling coincided with what he felt. Ever since he knew that Chu Li could bring him into the heavenly demonic realm, his originally dead heart was revived. He realized that he had buried so much unwillingness and anger in his heart for so many years. He had always had a strong urge to go against heaven and change his fate. However, he had been suppressing all kinds of impulses for so many years. At this moment, this strange feeling ignited him. His eyes suddenly shot out a cold light. He leaped up and unsheathed his sword in the air. He displayed heaven murder sword technique. Chi! The sword aura of heaven murder sword technique slashed across the surroundings. The stone table was slashed by the sword aura, revealing a deep hole. The stone block was slashed by the sword aura and a corner fell off. A deep mark appeared on the surrounding wall. It emitted a cold aura that made people not dare to look directly at it. Chu Li clapped his hands and smiled. Lu Jianfei's comprehension was really outstanding. He only needed a little guidance from Chu Li to cultivate it successfully. He was worthy of being the top disciple of Tai Hao Peak. Lu Jianfei vented all kinds of negative thoughts with his sword. He sheathed his sword and looked at Chu Li in surprise. What secret skill is this? Chu Li smiled. It's the scripture impartation method. Senior Lu, you didn't have your guard up. Otherwise, it wouldn't have such an effect. Amazing! Lu Jianfei sighed. Not only did he praise Chu Li for being able to pull him into his illusion, but more importantly, Chu Li was able to pass on the sword intent of heaven murder sword to him, allowing him to comprehend heaven murder sword technique in one go. The sword intent that could only be understood but could not be conveyed was actually transmitted by him. This broke the precedent and was extremely shocking. Chu Li said, "If Senior Lu had any distracting thoughts, I wouldn't be able to complete it." Chapter 2245. Lu Jianfei sighed. I've mastered it now, right? Chu Li smiled. I've mastered it. That's great. Lu Jianfei smiled. When he thought about meeting his sweetheart soon, he became excited again. He initially thought that the cultivation of heaven murder sword technique was difficult and not something that could be accomplished in one go. He did not expect it to be so easy. This was all thanks to Chu Li's mysterious and unfathomable technique of transferring energy. Chu Li said, "Senior Lu, let's depart tomorrow." "All right." Lu Jianfei nodded. Chu Li exited and saw Fu Kaiwei standing outside. She stood outside the cave, her yellow robe fluttering in the wind, exuding a lonely aura. Chu Li knew that she had been thinking about revenge, so he came to her side. She turned to look at him and brushed her messy hair. "Masters Junior Lu has learned heaven murder sword technique?" Chu Li nodded. Fu Kaiwei smiled. "Let's hope that lovers get married." Chu Li smiled. "That might not be the case. Life is full of strange things. I don't know what's waiting for Senior Lu. Their identities will make it difficult for them to be together unless he cultivates the real heavenly demonic power." "Impossible." Fu Kaiwei shook her head. "I think it's good enough if we can see each other once a month or even once a year. People who truly love each other don't have to stay together all the time." Chu Li smiled and shook his head without saying anything. It was obvious that she had never fallen in love before. It was a painful torture to not be able to stay together with one's lover. They would want to be together every minute and second. Once they were apart, they would not be able to see each other. They would feel dull and would not be motivated to do anything. Fu Kaiwei said, "Congratulations, your cultivation level has increased again after this life and death battle." Even though Chu Li's earth demonic stone concealed his aura, she could sense that Chu Li had become stronger through observation. Chu Li nodded. "Disasters and blessings always come hand in hand. Killing Lu Feijie caused a lot of trouble, but I also gained a lot. Unfortunately, your current cultivation level is not enough to deal with Song Wuji." Fu Kaiwei shook her head. "I'm still far from it." Chu Li replied, "All right, I'll continue to cultivate diligently. After accompanying Senior Lu to the heavenly demonic realm this time, I'll return to the foreign battleground to continue training." "Aren't you afraid that the other 3 Supreme Lords will come looking for you?" Fu Kaiwei was surprised, her big bright eyes staring at him. Chu Li smiled. "This is a rare opportunity. Since the ruler of God hasn't appeared yet, I should take this opportunity to improve my cultivation level. Once the ruler of God is born, my good days will come to an end. When that time comes, Shao Qi and Ming Yu will have to stay at Taihao Peak." "Yes, of course." Fu Kaiwei nodded and said, "I won't let them go down the mountain." If Azura could not deal with Chu Li, he would definitely make a move on the women around him. There was no doubt about this. Azura did not follow the rules at all. Although Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue were powerful, they could not take the risk. Chu Li gave a fist salute and was about to leave. His expression suddenly changed and he frowned in deep thought. Fu Kaiwei saw his expression change and stared at him curiously. He had always been calm and composed, calm and unrestrained. There were not many things that could make his expression change, so it had to be something big. Chu Li had been frowning in deep thought. What happened? Fu Kaiwei could not help but ask curiously. Chu Li looked up at her. "Shao Qi has gone missing." Fu Kaiwei said, "Junior sister Shao hasn't returned. Did something happen to her?" Chu Li said, "I can't sense her. Something's not right." He and Shao Qi had always had a faint connection, but this connection was different from Sun Mingyue's. Sun Mingyue and Chu Li could sense each other through the Supreme Diamond Scripture, so they could talk to each other in their minds. The connection he had with Shao Qi was not a mystical technique, but it was a kind of bone-deep bond. The depth and closeness of their relationship gave him a sense of sustenance and bondage. It was an extremely wonderful connection, similar to having a telepathic connection. No matter how far away they were, they could sense each other. Now that he could not sense Shao-Chi, it was obvious that something had happened to her. Shao-Chi had a void breaching bead. Even if she was in danger in the foreign battlefields and encountered people like Du Kellan and Lu Feigjie, she could escape with the void breaching bead. How could she suddenly disappear? Chu Li panicked a little and quickly took a deep breath. He formed a mudra with both hands and channeled Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture. After a while, he completely suppressed his emotions, leaving only his rationality. Fu Kaiwei felt that something was wrong when she saw him like this. She stared at him with her clear eyes. Chu Li, is junior sister Xiao in danger? Fu Kaiwei frowned. Chu Li said slowly, it's very likely. I have to go back to the foreign lands. I can only apologize to Senior Lu and ask him to go to the heavenly demonic realm himself. He can enter with the heaven murder sword technique. This, Fu Kaiwei said, why don't we ask Masters Junior Lu to wait? She felt that it was impossible. The heavenly demonic realm was mysterious to Devis and no one had ever set foot in it. Chu Li said, Senior Lu can't wait. We just need to ask him to put aside other martial arts and just use the heaven murder sword technique. The heavenly demonic realm isn't that scary. Alright. Fu Kaiwei sighed. Be careful then. The other 3 honorable lords might be looking for you even before the ruler of God appears. She felt terrified just thinking about it. After witnessing the might of an honorable lord, she had no confidence. Her cultivation level was similar to Chu Li's, but she lacked Chu Li's ruthlessness and decisiveness, as well as his perfect grasp of timing. Chu Li smiled and gave her a fist salute. Tell Mingwei that I can't bid farewell to her anymore. You guys! Fu Kaiwei shook her head and could not help but laugh. She was smart and could naturally tell that Sun Mingwei and Chu Li were at odds with each other. However, outsiders could not intervene in the matter between the 3 of them, so she could only stay out of it. She could only say that Chu Li reaped what he sowed. If he had focused on one thing, there would not have been so much trouble. Chu Li suddenly disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in Sleeping Dragon City and went straight to the foreign lands battlefield. He traveled quickly and swept across the land like a shadow. He was silent but incredibly fast. He used the combination of the Heavenly Star Insight technique and the Heaven's Eye to deduce where Shao-Chi was last seen. He was burning with anxiety, but he had a feeling that Shao-Chi was still alive, so he was in a hurry to find her. If he was a second late, Shao-Chi's life and death would be decided. He had already activated the sacrificial divine power. At the same time, his mind was spinning rapidly as he focused on his surroundings. The red light on his body soared into the sky. The Azuras within 100 miles could sense his presence, and could not help but feel murderous toward him. They wanted to kill him at all costs. The higher their cultivation level, the stronger their murderous intent toward him. While he was traveling, 2 great Azuras suddenly appeared. Their eyes were bloodshot and they were extremely furious. They rushed toward him without a care for their own safety. Chu Li did not even look at them. Without slowing down, the 9 swords rose from the scabbard and formed a sword wheel. They turned into a ball of silver light and shot toward the 2 great Azuras. Then, the 9 swords returned to the top of his head and formed a sword wheel. Chapter 2246. 2 streaks of red light slowly floated into his body. While he was sprinting, he also sensed that the 2 great Azuras were acting strangely. Compared to before, their killing intent seemed to be even stronger. It was as if they could not control themselves when they saw him and did not make a decision after careful consideration. They were filled with anger and killing intent as if they wanted to kill him at all costs. Even if they could not defeat him, they would die together. In the past, his body also had a red glow, But the great Asuras did not have such a strong killing intent. As for the two great Asuras just now, they definitely did not recognize him. It was only because they were affected by the red light emanating from his body that they rushed out to die without a care for their own safety. He pondered. Could it be that the stronger the red light on his body, the more attractive he would be to the Asuras, and the more it would affect the Asuras' killing intent? Not only would they sense it, but they would also hate him and want to kill him? The stronger the red glow, the stronger their killing intent. Unable to control themselves? If that was the case, it was because he had killed Lu Feijie earlier. It was as if the red line on Lu Feijie's body was exceptionally thick. With that red line, the red glow on his body became even stronger and shot up into the sky. As he rushed forward, more and more great Asuras rushed out to kill him. Even though their cultivation levels were far weaker than his, they still attacked him without hesitation and without reason. Chuli did not even need to use 9 swords. The regal heaven's sword lightly swept past their necks and cut off their heads. Then, they turned into a mist of blood and a red line that floated out and disappeared. His speed was not affected by his sword attacks. His feet were light and the sword in his hand was light. It did not seem like he was killing people but was just waving it casually. Yet, the great Asuras just stuck their heads forward and let him kill them. Chuli rushed out more than 1,000 miles. The number of great Asuras that he had killed had already reached 20. The red glow on his body became even stronger. Based on what he knew, although there were many great Asuras in the Asura boundary, there were not as many as 20 of them within 1,000 miles. It was obvious that these great Asuras were going to attack Hidden Dragon City because this place was close to it. Could it be that these great Asuras were going to attack Hidden Dragon City? As he pondered over this possibility, he continued to rush forward. Another great Asura rushed out from the forest beside him. This Asura had a profound cultivation level, and his aura was like a torrential wave. His eyes were clear, unlike the previous Asuras who all had bloodshot eyes. Chuli did not stop moving. He avoided the great Asura and continued to dash forward. This great Asura scoffed and followed closely behind him. Chuli was unable to shake him off for a while. Although his cultivation level was not at the level of a revered lord, it was still a rare sight. Chuli had already activated the sacrificial divine power. His body was like a shadow, but he could still keep up. Chuli frowned and growled, "Are you planning to attack Hidden Dragon City?" The great Asura was tall and looked like a handsome middle-aged man. As he followed Chuli closely, he shook his head and said, "What's there to attack in Crouching Dragon City?" Chuli scoffed. "Then why are they all near Sleeping Dragon City? There are no other places in the Foreign Realm battlefield that we can kill, so of course we have to go to the vicinity of Wulong City." The great Asura smiled. Chuli said, "You talk big. I don't believe that you've killed all the celestial beings in the foreign battlefield. So what if you believe me or not? You're going to die anyway." The great Asura shook his head and smiled. "Looking at your aura, you've clearly committed a heinous crime and deserve to die." Chuli laughed. "Killing Asuras isn't a crime. I'm just enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. You deserve to die." The great Asura scoffed and suddenly let out a long whistle. 3 long whistles were heard. When the whistles started, they were still far away. When the whistles stopped, they were already very close. 3 great Asuras fluttered over. The 4 of them surrounded Chuli. Chuli did not stop and asked, "Which revered lord do you work for?" "You know the revered lord?" The handsome middle-aged man was surprised. Chuli scoffed. "The Asura's revered lord can't be known by others? If you know our revered lord, it seems that you're not a nobody. Of course, if you were a nobody, you wouldn't have been able to kill so many Asuras." "Lu Feijie? How did you know?" "Because he died by my hand." "Impossible!" "Haha. Can't he die because he's a revered lord?" "Did you really kill the revered lord?" The handsome middle-aged man's face darkened and his eyes glowed red. He was no longer rational and calm. Chu Li nodded. I killed him with my own hands. With your abilities, it's impossible for you to kill the revered lord. How about this? Chu Li laughed coldly. The 9 hilts above his head suddenly shot out a silver light that engulfed the 4 of them. When they saw the silver light coming, the 4 of them wanted to fight back but were instantly destroyed. The silver light passed through unhindered, leaving only 4 clouds of blood mist and 4 red lines. He only had 1 sword energy left in his 9 energy seas, which was the weakest sword he could unleash. These 4 red lines fused with his body, causing the red light to grow brighter. From afar it looked like a blazing flame. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. If he did not combine the 9 swords into one, he would have to spend some effort to deal with these 4 great Asuras. He would not be able to use his body movement technique without stopping and not interfere with his journey. The 9 swords into one was too powerful. It was not in vain for him to obtain it. However, he did not feel happy at all. Instead, his heart felt heavy. The handsome middle-aged man was not lying. The Celestials in the foreign battlefields had suffered heavy casualties, so most of them had retreated back to Sleeping Dragon City. Only those who were bold continued to rush back to the foreign battlefields from outside Sleeping Dragon City. Celestials were rare in the foreign battlefields as Asuras were everywhere. However, Shao Qi had suddenly disappeared. She definitely did not return to Sleeping Dragon City. Instead, she had disappeared. Could it be that one of the revered lords encountered her and instead of killing her, he only abducted her? He immediately suppressed this thought. It was unlikely. If she really encountered a revered lord, Shao Qi would have crushed the void-breaching bead and returned. Thoughts surged in his mind as he ran for his life. He activated the sacrificial divine power without stopping, regardless of the consequences. Later on, he encountered more than 10 great Asuras and killed them one by one. His 9 energy seas were once again filled with the 9 sword energies. He stopped in front of a ravine and frowned as he looked at the quiet ravine. He did not rush into it. Shao Qi's aura finally appeared here. Could it be that Shao Qi had stepped into the ravine and disappeared? Chu Li could feel the faint fluctuation of a formation. The power of this formation was shocking. It was definitely the work of a master. After years of refinement and the vicissitudes of life, the power of the formation had become stronger. It was almost like a natural formation. He could not break this formation in a short period of time. If it was not for his strong soul and sharp senses, he would not have realized that this was a formation. It was possible that Shao Qi did not notice and directly entered it. She would then be trapped and unable to come out. It was obvious how powerful this formation was to be able to isolate his and Shao Qi's senses. He took a deep breath and stopped using the sacrificial divine power. Instead, he performed the Heavenman escape technique and flew inside with a smile on his face. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.